City of Northglenn, Channel 8, keeping you informed of events in your community.
I would now like to call the regular council session to order for the 24th day of June, 2019. Joanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Escobar.
Here.
Councilmember Sowers.
Here.
Councilmember Leidy.
Here.
Councilmember Downing.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Whitman.
Here.
Councilmember Duran-Mollica.
Here.
Councilmember Wilford.
Here.
Could we join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First thing up is the resolution for the appointment of mayor. Joanna, would you read the title?
A resolution appointing the mayor of the city of Northglenn, Colorado.
I would move for approval and inserting the name of Antonio Escobar.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do we have any other nominations? Open the vote.
Antonio, would you
sorry?
like to be the mayor?
I accept. I don't know about liking it, but I surely accept.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Open the vote.
Yep, the vote is open.
Thank you.
I know. Give me just a couple more minutes. I know. I do have words later, please. I voted, Joanna.
Okay, thank you. I will close that vote, and CR 63 with the name Antonio Escobar inserted passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will now call forward Judge Dale Hash to administer the oath. Corey, grab this.
Is your wife here to hold the Bible?
You'll raise your right hand, please. I, Antonio B. Escobar,
I, Antonio B. Escobar,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the laws of the State of Colorado,
the laws of the State of Colorado,
the Northglenn City Charter,
Northglenn City Charter,
and the ordinances of the City of Northglenn,
and the ordinances of the City of Northglenn,
and will faithfully perform the duties of the office of mayor of the City of Northglenn,
and I will faithfully
perform
the duties as mayor of the City of Northglenn,
upon which I am about to enter to the best of my ability.
which I am about to enter to the best of my ability.
And now you are sworn in as mayor.
Well, I'm truly honored, to say the least. I will do my best to represent the city in a good way. I want to say thank you to all my colleagues for their confidence in me. I'm truly humbled by it. This is the responsibility that I signed up for when I asked you to vote me as Mayor Pro Tem. In the event that I needed to fill in for the mayor, that I would prepare myself and be able to do that. So over the next 134 days, I'll do my best. I will lead in a positive and a proactive and respectful manner. Again, I thank you, my colleagues. I'm honored. Okay, response to citizen inquiries, Heather?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to report the CRM monthly stats to council for May 2019. In May, we had 102 requests opened. 84 of those requests were closed. We had 72% of those requests via the website. 5% were requested by calling or emailing an employee. And then 23% were done via our mobile app. The top most requested topic was an abandoned vehicle on public property. The second was request for a new trash cart. And then the third was reports of tall grasses. And the fourth most requested topic was general code enforcement nuisance concerns. In terms of closing out those requests, 41 were done within 3 days. 17 were done between 4 and 7 days. 12 were done between 8 and 11 days. And then 7 were done, took about 12 days to close out. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Do you feel that that we're holding steady on our app, or are you seeing that decline? Because it seems to me we're staying right around 23, 25.
Great question, Councilmember Brown. We actually dropped in May. We were staying around the high 20s, low 30s. So we saw a bit of a drop in May. My guess is that we're going to see a spike in June with the summer month and grasses and other things on a nuisance code enforcement perspective. So I think, as we move into the remainder of the year, we'll keep an eye on it and see, if we continue to see a drop. We're being consistent in terms of our marketing of the program, so I think it just could be a timing.
A fluke.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? All right. Council will join me down on the floor. We have some proclamations and some awards to give out for beautification. First, I'd like to call up Brian Carney. Brian? Hello. Pleasure to meet you. I'm Antonio Escobar, your new mayor.
You should tell me more.
Where's our photographer? This is going to take a while, choreographing all this. Proclamation reads as, whereas the city of Northglenn celebrates its 50th anniversary in 2019, and whereas the city is celebrating residents whose lives and deeds have been positively affected the city to save lives and others. Whereas Brian Carney assisted in the apprehension of a perpetrator of criminal assault on a neighbor, and whereas Brian witnessed criminal behavior and immediately reported it to the police, and whereas Mr. Carney demonstrated concern for his neighbors and actively sought for help. Brian has contributed to the health and safety of his neighborhood, and the community at large by his actions. And whereas Mr. Carney has positively impacted the lives and living conditions of individuals and the community at large, I now therefore, Antonio Escobar, Mayor of the City of Northglenn, Colorado, hereby congratulate Brian for being honored by his fellow residents, City Council, and myself for his contribution to the City of Northglenn, dated this date in Northglenn, Colorado. Congratulations. Council, and would you like to?
Do you want me to stay down?
It's okay.
Oh, Brett, Becky, I want you to go. I gotta use your body. All the way up. All the way up? Oh, no, Becky, you're a little bit taller than Joyce.
Am I taller than Joyce? I didn't notice that.
Not anymore.
Everybody who's not taller than Joy, raise your hand.
And Darcy, and get right there. Yeah, there we go. Nice.
You good?
Wait, I need him to be right here.
You're right about that.
I know I am, because my stomach was gonna show.
I like
So you need
it.
to be there to block it.
Fantastic. Good call. All right. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Don't move. Thanks. We'll let it slide this time.
It's good filming.
It's digital layer. There you go. Great job.
Thank you. Oh, really? Well, thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much.
Who's greeting Mr. Carney Jr.?
Is this on? All right, can I have Philip Kearney Jr. up here? Come on down.
Second.
All right.
Philip James Carney the second.
The second, okay, thank you. All right, whereas the City of Northglenn celebrates its 50th anniversary in 2019, and whereas the city is celebrating residents whose lives and deeds have positively affected the city and the lives of others, and whereas Philip Kearney II assisted in the apprehension of a perpetrator of criminal assault on a neighbor, and whereas Philip witnessed criminal behavior and immediately reported it to the police, and whereas Mr. Kearney demonstrated concern for his neighbors and actively sought to help, and whereas Philip has contributed to the health and safety of his neighborhood and the community at large by his actions, and whereas Mr. Kearney has positively impacted the lives and living conditions of individuals and the community at large. Now, therefore, I, Julie Duran-Mullica, on behalf of Antonio Esquivel, the mayor of the City of Northglenn, Colorado, hereby congratulate Philip Kearney II for being honored by fellow residents, City Council, and myself for his contributions to the City of Northglenn.
Chief?
Thank you.
Hang around with this. I want the chief to speak to there.
Yeah, whatever, I'm not shy. Good evening, and actually, it's just warms my heart when you have citizens step up and look out for their neighbors, and that's what a community's all about. The city of Northglenn has been like that for a very long time, and the courage of these two young men, and I say that because I've known their dad a long time, but it doesn't surprise me that you guys did that just knowing your father. So again, thank you so much for the courage identifying those two suspects and giving us enough time to apprehend them. So thank you so much. was on council and then he was also the chairman of Mayor for years.
Okay, I can see all of your faces, so smile. Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Don't move. Sorry. I did. I'm with you for open eyes. That's all. Good. Awesome. All right, thank you.
Okay, Mary Herman, it's your turn. You want to head up?
Mary Herman, this is your life.
Sure, you can turn around to the camera.
All right. Well, it's my honor to give you this proclamation. So, whereas the City of Northglenn celebrates its 50th anniversary in 2019, and whereas the city is celebrating residents whose lives and deeds have positively affected the city and the lives of others, and whereas Mary Herman has led the Northglenn Senior Organization for many terms over several decades, and whereas Mary fosters relationships and well-being among senior residents in the community, and whereas Mary serves as a member of the Northglenn Community Foundation and ensures that seniors are well represented, and whereas Mary is an inspiration for other residents of any age, and whereas Mary has positively impacted the lives and living conditions of individuals and the community at large. Now, therefore, I, Marcy Whitman, in conjunction with Antonio Escobar, Mayor of the City of Northglenn, Colorado, hereby congratulate Mary Herman for being honored by fellow residents, City Council, and myself for her contributions, and to the City of Northglenn, dated at Northglenn, Colorado, this 24th date of June 2019. Can I just add one thing? So Mary was sick last year. That's right, she did. And the whole time, her thing was how she wasn't able to be up at the senior center, doing all the activities at the senior center and volunteering. So instead of her trying to get better, she was focused on how the oxygen was holding her down and she couldn't get up to the senior center. So that's just a great resident. So thank you so much, Mary.
Marcy.
There you go. Now, okay. Okay. 1 second. One more, Miss Mary. 3 more, really fast.
Smile.
5. Good. You're doing great. I like that you got her. I'm gonna have to give her to my dad. That's a great one. I'm willing to make a speech.
I'll let you off easy.
Okay.
Well, congratulations, Mary.
Okay, I need Rob Conrad. Where's Rob? Awesome, come on up. Nice to meet you. All right, so whereas the city of Northglenn celebrates its 50th anniversary in 2019, and whereas the city is celebrating residents whose lives and deeds have positively affected the city and the lives of others, and whereas Rob Conrad is described as a wonderful, caring, and friendly neighbor, and whereas Mr. Conrad shovels sidewalks for his neighbors, and whereas Rob helps his neighbors with taking care of pets and helping others when and how needed, and whereas Mr. Conrad has a positive impact on his neighborhood and improved the quality of life of his neighbors and the city of Northglenn. And whereas Rob Conrad is an example for others. Now therefore I, Meredith Leidy, on behalf of the entire council and the mayor of Northglenn, hereby congratulate Rob Conrad for being honored by fellow residents, city council, and myself for his contributions to the city of Northglenn. Dated at Northglenn, Colorado, this 24th day of June, 2019.
Thank you, everybody.
Your neighbors love you.
I guess they do.
They do. I was teasing.
Thanks for shoveling, Rob. It was great. I have the shovel. Very cold. There you go. My name is someone for a reason. Maybe that's not. That's good. That's because I was shoveling the winter. There you go. Our mom would have made me a winter. True. All right. Is it possible to have all of our awardees at once?
Sure, go ahead and do it now.
Okay. Can I have all the awardees and their families, all those recognized residents, come up with their families and get a quick shot with the council? So that would be okay. Thank you.
Let's hope not.
More pictures.
More pictures. This is what the 50th anniversary is all about, is recognizing the members of our community, the work that they do, and, no.
Behind Rob. Actually, right behind him. Oh, wait, where's your family? Is this mine? Oh.
You should be lifted.
There you go.
Does that work for you?
Okay.
You want to stand up level.
Right.
That's great. Excellent. Okay. So, Antonio, one, thank you, Mayor. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good. All right. Sorry. So, is your hair and Antonio's smile? So, yeah, your hair and Antonio smile are. Okay, there we go. Now I can see your smile. Excellent, good stuff. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good job, guys. 1, 2, 3. Don't move. This is for the direction. So. Good. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you all, everyone, for your work.
Get that Jaguar going. Oh, I have a script. Joshua, hi. Joshua. How you doing, Joshua? Good morning, Tony Escobar, you're the mayor. In case you missed the first part of the presentation. Joshua is a member of Scout Troop 124 and is an Eagle Scout candidate. Joshua's project consisted of converting 9 city flower beds to their own specific irrigation system instead of relying on turf irrigation. This project is very beneficial to the flowers and a huge help to the city conserving water. Through his hard work, management of the project, volunteers, and donations, Joshua completed 9 flower bed irrigation systems prior to the spring planting season. He provided the necessary parts to complete the project for each flower bed. Thank you, Joshua, for your hard work, your dedication, and all that you do for our city. Would you like to say a few words? This is your first test at public speaking. And communities out there.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's not an easy thing for a person like me whose mind it doesn't always think straight to do a project like that.
Congratulations again. New York Council.
It's quite all right. I'm remembering all this.
Yes, dear. Hey there. Smile. Thank you. Oh, awesome. That's it. There you go. Good. All right, one more. Excellent. Good. Thank you.
You're on.
I'm ready. Okay, I think I'll use the microphone tonight. Good evening, Mayor, new Mayor, and City Council. Thank you for having us here tonight to celebrate the first Yard of the Month Beautification Awards for the month of June. It doesn't seem like summer yet, does it? Maybe this week we'll start finally getting the warmer weather. The Northglenn Neighborhood Beautification Program was established now 22 years ago, and it recognizes all of you that were able to attend tonight. For people that really work hard on your yards, just the front yards, I know your backyards are gorgeous also, but it really helps your neighbors know to try a little bit harder even, to make all of the homes in Northglenn look so beautiful, and it's kind of catching. So, like I said, this is our first award of the summer. We do June, July, and August, and for June this year, we're just doing the Yard of the Month awards. We have several families that were able to attend tonight, some that weren't able to attend, but I've spoken to everyone, and everyone was really excited to be part of the June awards. Also, we have the city's divided up into 13 areas. We have volunteer judges that work in those 13 areas, and during the months of the summer, they're driving around in your neighborhoods just looking at all the beautiful flowers and yards, and that's how they get chosen. I'm not the one choosing them. So if you see a beautiful yard and you'd like to nominate somebody, please give me a call or email me and give me that address, and I'll in turn give it to that judge. So without further delay, we're going to get these beautiful pictures up here and recognize the families that were able to attend tonight. We have certificates, and then we have a small sign that you can put in your yard or garden or window. So our first home tonight is Paula Meisner. She wasn't able to attend tonight, but she lives at 10925 Verna Lane, and let's be sure to clap for her. Next, we have Wesley Amon at 10630 Madison Way. I did forget to mention the large metal yard signs remain in their yards for the whole month of June, and then they'll travel to the next home in July. We have Eric Castillo at 11178 Fillmore Way. We have Mike and Jill Farrer at 11750 Keogh Drive, and they did call today and would not be able to attend. Tom Spencer lives at 11421 Clarkson Street, and I'm not sure if Tom is here tonight, but they just completed finishing up their front yard and waiting like the rest of us are for flowers to bloom. So our next one is Michael and Robin Ayers at 11359 Downing Drive, and I believe they're here tonight. Come on up.
Here's my contribution. Don't forget to put that in your window.
So it goes right here. Good. My daughter, thank you. Yep. Sorry. Good. Perfect. Okay. 1, 2, 3. All right. Now, if any of you don't want to be caught smiling, no, because I'm catching you not smiling. So. Oh. There we go. That's good. But we'll do all with the good camera. Smile. Okay. there you go. Thank you. Good.
I'm tired today, I can't do it. I did it so much.
Oh, your garden's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you have, Jim. Just wondering if you guys wanted to say anything. You do? Awesome.
The tree without the leaves is called a tecalpa, and it's the male tree. And right now, its leaves have fully grown almost, and the leaves are really big, and it looks even more beautiful when the leaves are full. It's my favorite tree. So,
How old is that tree?
I'm not quite sure.
We have no idea. We've lived there 16 years, and they were already there.
Oh. They kind of look like the ones that came with our houses when they were first built.
Those trees that have the big sticks,
Yes.
that's a male. It doesn't do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the boys don't do the flowers in the pots. He's just, there's lots of girls in yards, but he's the only male that we have.
I have the girls.
Yeah, we have 3 of them.
I know how he feels.
That's awesome. It's very pretty.
You want to circle around so they don't have
Oh, sure.
easier?
Yeah. Thank you.
I love it. Walking by.
I fell on my porch, chasing my dog. Thank you. We would know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Donna Cavello and Kelly Boyer at 11068 Murray Drive, and I know they're here, so come on up.
Congratulations. I don't know who gets all the credit. Who gets all the credit?
We both do. We both work on it. It's a joint effort.
Keyword?
Joint effort. Well, we just love our house. We're sisters, and we decided to get the house of our dream. We'd buy it together. It's working out very well.
It's working out well.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Our
schedules are opposite, so we see each other in passing, it's beautiful.
So I get that. Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations. We have counselors. Turn around.
It's
Shake their hand.
gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah, I
Thank you very much.
One, two, three, smile. Absolutely. Thanks. Perfect. Thanks, guys. Okay. Right hand everyone. There we go. You're excited today, council. Good. Excellent. Thank you. She is because I'm not smiling.
Okay, next we have Kurt Shishlis at 10657 Corona Street. Beautiful home. I'm not sure if Kirk is here tonight. A lot of hard work. I know this person is here, James and Patricia Kuzera at 10874 Pearl Court.
You may or may not like my decoration, but I lived in the mountains most of my life, and I tried to duplicate that with pine trees and big rocks and an aspen tree, and so it's just the way I wanted it.
Here's my contribution to today, I didn't get it if others. It's in your window. So your neighbors could be jealous.
Oops.
Antonio, you're pushing.
One step too far.
Happened to migrate over. Good. There we go. On the left, if you could smile. Over here, everyone over here, smile.
All right.
Thank you so
Next, we have Chris and Tara Lyons at 11714 Sherman Street. Jolie and Misha Hale at 10796 Livingston Drive.
Actually need 3 hands to do this, you know that. Congratulations. 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 Thank you for taking care of your yard and making it beautiful. Would you like to say a few words?
Just thank you. It's been a lot of hard work. Our other yard assistant is somewhere in the room. Hiding. Yes. He's gotten this a few times, so we've had some good influence.
He's your yard assistant?
He is. That's Dad.
I love your dad.
So I've had some good influence on the landscaping.
So for our first house, we could have asked for better help and neighbors to help with it as well.
Well, we're glad you got your first house here with us.
Okay, you're not finished yet. More pictures.
And don't forget to smile.
Mine's usually blinking, so you're good.
All right.
Okay, and last but not least, Harold and Joanne Sandoval, 1328 West 102nd Avenue. So Eric Castillo is here now, so we're going to go back to his home. Right there. Eric, would you come? all can come up. If you'd like to all come up, that would be nice.
Wow, are you Eric?
I'm Carlos.
You can hold the little one, right? You want to hold the big one?
And you know, what did what a house looks like?
Cool as that?
You're right.
It's right there, Eric. The slide is reflected.
Now my concern is Julie, so it's not you or
Hey, just wanted to say thank you to everybody that's here for clapping, supporting us. We do our best to try to keep the lawn looking great, try to do my stripes in there, try to take care of the tree. I got a friendly neighborhood competition going with all my neighbors around me, so that really helps to keep our city looking nice and clean. And we even take care of the rocks around the, I guess it's between city area and also HOA area, but my little boys here, they walk around with me and help point out all the weeds in the rocks. So I spray everything, get everything looking nice. So thank you, everybody.
Beautiful, I love it. You've been working hard. Thank you.
Now it's been nothing that works.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the beautification winners, and I also wanted to say thank you to Joshua Hyatt for doing the Eagle Scout project with our Parks Department. You did a great job. Thank you.
Yeah. I would have handed it to you, Chief.
Me too. Next agenda item is public invited to be heard.
No.
Oh. We do have somebody here. Where are you, Preston? I'm sorry. I got so tired of standing up there on my tippy toes. Come on up. Ready for your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I am Preston Gibson. I'm an area manager with Xcel Energy. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I wanted to just sort of take a slight divergence and again congratulate that Eagle Scout candidate. I was a Scout Master and was very active in scouting, and currently I'm the nominating committee chair for the Valley District, which encompasses this area. And our responsibility is to find adult leadership for district-level roles. So since I had the mic, I thought I might encourage anyone who could potentially be interested in getting active in the district to please contact me, and we'll do what we can to get with them and see if they might be a great candidate, hopefully for the Scout movement here. So, at any rate, let's move into the presentation that I have to give tonight. I'll try to move through it fairly quickly. It's about a 15, 20-minute kind of presentation. It's on our Colorado Energy Plan and where we're headed generally with renewable energy, some of the technology that we're bringing to make it more customer friendly and give more options to the customers. So just quickly, Xcel Energy, you probably know, we're not just in Colorado. Public service companies, what we're actually still known by, we're an operating company of our parent company, which is Xcel Energy, based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You can see we serve in the upper Midwest. You can see Colorado and then New Mexico, as well as Texas. We have about 3.6 million electricity customers, 2 million natural gas customers. In Colorado, we have about 1.5 million electricity and 1.5 million natural gas customers. Our priorities, you can see, leading the clean energy transition, enhancing customer experience, and keeping bills low. It used to be that keeping bills low and keeping reliable electricity was really what we focused on. And over the last 20 or so years, we've really come to the forefront and focusing to a much larger degree on bringing renewable energy to our system. And I've got some, I think, exciting news about where we're headed currently. So number one, our job is reduce carbon and then protect cost and reliability and advance technology, again, giving our customers more opportunity to take advantage of some different programs. So in terms of leading the clean energy transition, we call it a bold vision for a carbon-free future. Currently, that's 2018. 2019, we're about 41% carbon reduction here in Colorado. So when I say 41% reduction, I'm talking about from 2005 levels. Okay, we generally use that as a measuring stick because we didn't have much renewable energy on our system at that point in time. So we've had a significant reduction, not only in terms of simply of carbon, but through renewable energy as well as our energy efficiency programs. We have our demand-side management energy efficiency programs, which accounts for between 5 and 10% of that reduction. The exciting thing is we're headed towards 80% reduction in 2030 and 100% carbon-free in 2050. I'll say more about that in just a few minutes. If you look back at 2005, you can see the way we generated our electricity was with coal, primarily, 65% coal generation. And if you move over to 2017, you can see that's gone down to 44%. And then by 2027, we expect that generation by coal will be about 23%. So, but commensurately, you can see that the amount of renewable generation has greatly expanded. We expect that to be about 57%. So this is our where we headed with our Colorado Energy Plan. Currently, we're at about 30% or so renewables. We plan to be 55% by 2026. So we're leading the carbon transition. And as a company, as I mentioned just a minute ago, we made an announcement actually in December. Our CEO from Minneapolis came out, was over at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, made a great announcement that we're going to be 80% carbon reduction by 2030 and 100% carbon-free by 2050. This was really breaking news in the country. We're the first utility to announce 100% carbon-free. We're going to very easily, I think, with the measures that we have planned, get to 80% carbon-free by 2030, which is huge. But there will be 100% carbon-free, we think, by 2050. We've done a lot to get towards that. We've had a number of plans. We've gotten much of the carbon out of this front range since I've been working with the company. I started working for Xcel Energy in late 2010. We started our Clean Air, Clean Jobs Act, and you might know where the Cherokee power plant is in North Denver, right off to the east of the freeway. You've seen the smokestacks for years. We basically eliminated all the coal. Those were coal-fired generation units. We got rid of them. We've also closed another coal-fired facility here, and we brought on more renewables. We did, instead of coal-fired at that Cherokee plant, we actually put a state-of-the-art natural gas turbine-fired unit there, which is about 90% cleaner than coal in terms of carbon reduction. So we're moving in that direction, have been moving in this direction for some long period of time. You can see that community, energy, and carbon goals are really all over the map. They're for different states in which we operate. You can see Minnesota, Wisconsin, Colorado, et cetera. And some want us to get to 100%, renewable energy by 2020, 2025. Some say by 2050. Some have carbon goals. They're all over the map. But where we're headed is where we think we can go fairly quickly. Grounded in climate science. Not only did we just simply sort of make the commitment, we wanted to be sure that what we were proposing to do would actually get us there. So we hired a climatologist, someone who does climate modeling at the University of Denver, to take a look at what we were proposing to do, to see if we could actually get there. And based on that research, we can, and we are going to very easily meet the Paris climate targets, which was no increase over 2% centigrade. And in fact, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Control, a United Nations panel, thinks maybe we should limit it to 1.5%, and we can also meet that 1.5% because of the renewables that we're adding to our system. As I mentioned, when our CEO came out and indicated we'd be 100% carbon free, we got a lot of press all over the nation. We got 60 million social media hits about that. And in addition, we got headlines from all over the country. You can see anything from New York Times on the bottom right to it's almost every paper in the country, it seemed, picked up our message. So how we plan to get there in terms of 80% reduction, 4 common elements: investing in wind and solar under the steel for fuel growth strategy, and offering customers more renewable energy options. Just a quick note on that. Just last year, we opened our Rush Creek Wind Farm on the Eastern Plains late last year. It's a 660 megawatt, very large facility, 302 megawatt, one of those real tall turbines. And that's now producing electricity by wind. It's putting it on our system. And it was the lowest cost energy that we had on our system at the time. So not only is it renewable, but it's low cost. We bought all the equipment here from Vestas in Colorado, so we kept the money here. We hired as many local contractors as we could to keep the money here. We also are paying taxes in Colorado and paying royalties to those farmers that on which we're have those turbines located on their land. So it was I think a really good story. We also are helping customers manage their energy usage and bills through energy efficiency and rebate programs. We have some state-of-the-art programs, probably more than most utilities in the country. Maintaining our carbon-free nuclear plants at the upper Midwest. Of course, we don't have any nuclear here. Don't have any plans at this point to add nuclear to Colorado, but we're planning to continue to maintain those plants in the upper Midwest. And transforming the energy grid by retiring and reducing the operation of aging coal plants and replacing their energy with flexible natural gas renewables and advanced technologies. And again, this is our Colorado energy plan, and part of that is to add 1,100 megawatts of wind, 700 megawatts of solar. Some of it's actually in Adams County. We're adding battery storage. We're adding 275 megawatts of battery storage. We announced that last year, and when we announced that, that was more battery storage than was under construction by all the utilities in the country. So 275 megawatts of battery storage. And also, to help us get to that 80%, we're going to be closing early, by about 10 years, 2 coal-fired generating units at our Comanche power plant down in Pueblo. And we're adding a lot of renewables in place of those coal plants in Pueblo. And we've worked very closely with the community. And we also are working closely with the employees, so nobody loses their job. Some people will retire or move on to other things, but those who remain will be trained. It's part of our ethos, part of what we do. There are challenges to get to 100% renewable. I talk about 100% carbon-free. 100% renewable requires that we have to overbuild our system significantly. Many studies show this by as much as 8 times the peak electricity. That's why we're going to continue to, at least in the foreseeable future, have some base generation, and coal is generally going to be phased out, but we're looking at continuing with some natural gas until technology gets us to the point where we can even eliminate natural gas. Our 2050 aspiration requires 24/7 carbon-free technology. So other kind of things that, technologies that may help us get there, natural gas with carbon capture and storage, you can see them up there. Could be some advanced nuclear, and we can also potentially turn renewable generation into a gas through electrolysis and then be able to use that gas and burn that gas. This just shows where we're putting some of the renewable energy. I guess essentially that's all the renewable energy in our Colorado Energy Plan here in Colorado. And you can see the wind turbines. Obviously that's wind, and then I think you can see what looks like solar panels. We also have a number of customer-focused energy solutions, our renewable choice program. So if we're not getting there quickly enough, our customers can take advantage of programs, some of which we've had in place for a long time. Wind Source, we've had in place since the mid-1990s. That is a program that was really a cutting-edge program in the country at the time, and still is a very popular program. And for an average home, for about $12 a month, if you pay that extra, subscribe to that program, pay about $12 a month, your electricity comes from wind generation. And then we also have solar rewards. That's a rooftop solar, solar gardens. We have something called Renewable Connect. We had our first phase of that last year. We're looking at adding more, where you could sign up for solar energy through the Renewable Connect program, and the cost is going to be very similar, very close to what your current cost is with the current grid mix, including all forms of generation. We have advanced grid intelligence and security. Those are actually advanced meters, and this is going to provide opportunities for us to, first of all, be able to respond more quickly when there's outages. We always ask you to call in if you have an outage, and that's primarily because if you have an outage just at your home, we don't know it. We don't know about it. Maybe a tree limb comes on that service wire at your home, and we don't know that you're out. We will know the large feeder lines, the large electric lines. We monitor all of that. What this is going to do is give us real-time data. If your power line of your house goes down, we'll immediately know it and immediately be able to start responding to that. This also allows us to more seamlessly add renewable energy to the system, and it allows us to have time of day and time of use, different pricing programs that will give you options for the way you can use your energy. Energy storage, I already mentioned the batteries. Energy efficiency leadership, about 150 programs is what we have. We believe that about 20 power plants, the construction of 20 new power plants, has been avoided by our programs, by our energy efficiency programs. Strategic electrification, primarily, want to just mention electric vehicles. Obviously, we know that, you see more and more of them on the road. Some of you may have electric vehicles. I don't. One day, I'm sure I will. We probably all will at some point in time. But there are about 20,000 of those here in Colorado. The governor wants us to get to 1 million by 2030. That's a big jump. And we just had some legislation passed just this last session that enables Xcel Energy to help you get there, help this state get there more quickly. We're now going to be able to invest in the infrastructure, the charging infrastructure for cars. And we'll be looking at big opportunities like for fleets and operations where we can impact a lot of vehicles. So that's something that we're going to be clearly looking at in the near future. As we like to say, we also think it's important to add renewable energy in a responsible way and in a cost-effective way. And we do that, and we do believe it's affordable. Currently, your energy bills in Colorado are more than 30% below the national average, even though we are also adding a significant amount of renewable energy to our system. So that's my presentation. Thanks for listening. I'll take questions at any time.
Okay, questions or comments for Preston?
It's not a question, it's a comment. Thank you, number one, for this. That was very clear and concise, and it made a lot of sense. I have a set of solar panels, and I have tons of questions always about what my bill means and all of that. And I just wanted to say thank you because your staff always can explain it. So no matter who I call, the customer service representatives in the solar department, that's probably not what it's called, but they are calm, they're professional, they take my crazy questions, and they do a really nice job of explaining how it all works. Because it's a little complicated when you get it up and running. So they do a great job, so I just wanted to say thank you for that. And then going back to the slide that says community energy and carbon goals, I don't see Northglenn on the slide, and so I'd like to see Northglenn in the future on the slide.
I think that would be great, and I know that you now have a sustainability plan, and I wanted to mention that you're also involved in our Partners in Energy program. Let me just say a word about that, if I could.
Yeah.
And I came out and actually pitched that program several times, and really glad that you're on it. Also, you have LED lighting here, right? So you take advantage of that program. No cost to the city, lowers your bills, provides less carbon in the atmosphere. But back to the Partners in Energy program, we're working with a group, I'm not sure what the group is called, but with your team here, and they've formulated a stakeholder group to develop an energy action plan, and it's going to dovetail with your sustainability plan. And then we're going to help you implement that plan. We help market and implement that plan. We spend about $100,000 per city on doing that. So we have a consultant that does this all over the country, and we'll spend about $100,000 on them just here in Northglenn, and about half of that developing the plan and half of it implementing the plan. And it's a neat program, and I'm so glad you're taking advantage of it. Yeah.
Julie?
Thank you so much for being here. And I'm really excited about your goals, the 2030 and the 2050 goals. I just think it's so exciting that we are able to have a partner like you to reach these goals. And it's so important that we do this for the climate. So just out of curiosity, though, I was curious. So on your 2050 aspiration slide, it talks about 24/7 carbon-free technology. So I was curious, what is Excel doing to either invest or do research or kind of work towards that carbon-free technology that you guys need for 2050 goals?
Well, we continually have contracts with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory.
Okay.
As well as the National Center for Atmospheric Research up in Boulder. So we do wind research, we do solar research, and all forms of renewable energy research. We're going to continue to put money towards research, but clearly we're not the only answer. So I think our industry as a whole, the electric utility industry needs to put funding into that research, as well as our government, our federal government needs to continue to provide research dollars to get us there. But we're going to continue to do that. We've done that for many years, and we're going to continue to step up and support our local labs and do research here.
And then do you have any idea how much Excel puts towards that kind of research?
From a dollar standpoint, I've never known.
Just curious.
Yeah,
Okay.
I could try to find out, but I've never known. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Any?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's very fun to say that. Preston, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
I've been participating in your Partners in Energy program in the stakeholder process, and it's been a huge learning curve. I feel like I've learned a ton, and I'm really excited to see where the process takes us. And I know that hopefully there's going to be a lot of community education there in terms of reducing energy consumption, which will ultimately help with some of that carbon that we've been talking about. I also just want to say thank you to Excel for being so aggressive in some of these climate, or in some of the clean energy goals. I share concerns about climate change and the reality that there's a strong likelihood that I'm preparing my child for a climate future that's very different than ours. So thank you to Excel for all of the work that you're doing. And I too would love to see Northglenn up there in terms of the 100% zero carbon and clean energy usage. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I don't know why Northglenn wasn't up there. We didn't, it wasn't intentional for, it might have been we put together a slide while you were working on your goals. I don't
think that we're there yet.
Yeah,
I think it's a conversation that we need to have.
But we'll put it on.
So, yeah, let's have it.
Thanks so much.
Marcy?
Hi, Preston. I just taking it a little bit off of the presentation only because you're here, and I wanted to just give you some public acknowledgement for always being a great partner and allowing us to be able to reach out to you when we have situations. I know you jumped right on it for Adams 12 needing a pole removed. We've had some tree issues and resident concerns, and I just think it speaks volumes to your dedication to helping all of us on council, city manager, and in resolving issues. So I really appreciate your attention to that.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? I ditto that. As I shared with you at CML, an elder in my community, in my ward, was real worried about his power being out because limbs had come down during the storm. I contacted Heather, and Heather contacted you, and you told somebody, go out there and do it. By Monday, it was done, and this was on a Saturday.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Thank
you're
you
a
for
great
that.
partner, and we thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Antonio, you don't have a ward anymore.
He has a city.
At the
You have a
time, Preston,
city.
when I had a
You
ward.
have a city.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Sheldon.
Okay, so now we can move on to public input. Limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Statements shall be related to city business and limited to matters of community interest. And the first person is Tim McCormick.
Thank you. Before I begin, I would like to extend my sincerest congratulations to your appointment as mayor tonight. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's also been an honor and a privilege to be in attendance tonight and watch the proclamations as well as the presentations. It is, in every sense of the word, an outstanding night for the city of Northglenn. Thank you for letting me be a part of that. Honorable Mayor Esquivel, members of the Northglenn City Council, my name is Tim McCormick. That is spelled M-C-C-O-R-M-A-C-K. My address is 1398 Cherrywood Drive. I am a candidate for your district attorney for the 17th Judicial District, serving Adams and Broomfield counties and the many wonderful communities that the district attorney serves, including the exceptional city of Northglenn. I have dedicated my 27-year career in district attorney's offices to public safety and public service. I am invested in my communities and my district. I am proud to say that I have resided in this district for the past 20 years. 2 of my 3 children were born and raised here. All 3 have attended public schools. My wife and I are invested in promoting and participating in our communities through our schools, community functions and events, as well as our church. I am a strong proponent of public service, and I am committed to your public safety. In my 27-year career as a prosecuting attorney, I distinguish between good citizens who make mistakes and those criminals who prey upon our communities. I have developed and cultivated strong, collaborative, and productive working relationships with members and individuals who have come in contact with the criminal justice system, to include judges, law enforcement, prosecutors, support staff, defense attorneys, and victims of crime. I seek justice for victims. I provide fairness to the accused. Your district attorneys should pursue justice in their communities without any predetermined agenda. I can tell you that I have practiced and tried to teach the prosecutors who I have worked with, mentored, and supervised over my career that there is a difference between human frailty and genuine evil, and to distinguish and dispose of their cases as accordingly. Everyone, regardless of politics, deserves to be safe. As your district attorney, every decision I make will not be based upon politics or how it will affect political careers. Rather, every decision made will be dictated by my desire to keep you, your family, and your community safe. I have the experience, the leadership, the knowledge, and the desire to bring a new and strong leadership to the district attorney's office and to be a district attorney that works with their communities. We've all heard the saying that elections have consequences. Compromising your public safety should not be one of them. The safety of you, your families, and the communities in which we live and work, and to get and work in your communities to prevent the commission of crime in the first place, should be the top priority of the district attorney. If you'd like to learn more about our campaign, please visit our website at www.mccormickforda.com. That's www.mccormickforda.com. Please join us in that effort, and thank you for the opportunity to address this honorable council tonight.
Thank you, Tim. Norm and Nancy, Terry?
Yes. My name is Norm Terry. We've lived in Northglenn for about the last 24 years. My question to the council is the open space off of 112th was supposed to have been done, I think, 2 months ago, and we just want to know what the progress is and what the holdup is.
Okay, I spoke to you Thursday.
Last week, yeah.
And I spoke to City Manager Guyer. Do you have any information to date?
I don't have an update. Amanda Peterson, our Director of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services, is out of the office, but, and I just will be getting back to the office tomorrow. I was out of town for a few days, so I will get a response and get back to the mayor and provide you with that information.
Okay, because it seems to me like a lot of programs that should be going on over there, they can't. So what, where are they going? But anyway, okay.
I mean, overall, what I can tell you is we've unfortunately run into a few drainage challenges with the project, which has caused delays overall. So without diving too deep into the specifics of what that looks like, the project is behind schedule, but I will provide you with an update as to when we hope to have it completed. So my apologies. It's just sometimes with construction projects, you do encounter things once you start digging into the ground that you don't anticipate. And overall, I would say drainage was one of the challenges we've experienced.
Okay, it would have been nice if we could have got that into the connection, the paper.
Great suggestion.
Just kind of an update as it
Sure.
came along.
Yep,
Just a thought.
yep, I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
for your
Mr.
time.
Terry.
So Heather, will you be taking action and getting something into the connection as an update?
Grady, you're in the back. Have we already gone to print for July?
We have not, we held off for tonight's appointment with the mayor.
Okay, let me connect with staff first thing tomorrow, and then we can find a way to squeeze something into July connection.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Next up is Donna Cavello. Donna? Donna Cabello? About Jay Jaramillo. Jay Jaramillo?
Oh, he's gone too.
I just saw them both.
Oh,
Okay.
maybe this.
Legislative update from the committee. Do we have any?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We met this evening and received a legislative update and overview of the previous session from State Representative Kyle Mollica. Additionally, we did discuss the next steps for going out to bid for a new lobbyist, as ours will be retiring this year. I believe that Heather will be sending around materials for you all to review. So if you have any questions or suggestions, please know that we're trying to get that out as quickly as possible. And then finally, we discussed that the Colorado Communities for Climate Action retreat is coming up this Thursday, June 27th in Vail. And at that time, we'll be discussing the policy statement as well as updates and amendments to that for the next calendar year. And I shared that with council this evening via email. I would love any thoughts, concerns, feedback that you may have in preparation for that retreat on Thursday. That's all from us tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Consent agenda?
Second.
What happened to my?
Now the vote is open.
Thank you.
Okay. Somehow I got logged out.
I did too. I did too. We all did.
Oh, we all did, okay. All right. Please vote.
We'll close that vote, and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
There are no items removed from the consent agenda. Public hearing. Joanna, would you read the title, please?
The first one is on CB 1923, a bill for an ordinance adding a new Article 18 to Chapter 18 of the Northglenn Municipal Code entitled Short-Term Rental Properties.
Move to approve? No, no. Presentation.
Okay, I will now open the public hearing on CB 1923. Is there anyone who would like to speak either for or against 1923?
I'm Mindy Mullet. I live.
Mindy?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Everybody.
I'm Mindy Mullet. I live at 11109 Melody Drive. I've lived there since 1990. I've run businesses here in Colorado off and on since that time. Currently, I run a small business out of my home called Analytics Informatics Institute, which was nominated for a home business office, our home-based business award this year, in January, from 2018. Also, along with that, for the last 8 months of 2018, I worked on trying to figure out how to put together a legal short-term rental business in Colorado. I submitted all the paperwork in December and started at the beginning of the year, and have built a respectable short-term rental business currently in Northglenn. The ordinance that I read shows a couple of different places I'd like you to reconsider. One of those is 18-18-6H, which prohibits any retail or commercial activities in a short-term rental, that being a home-based business, which I have. I have no employees other than myself. I have no customers that come or go. I work on the internet, phone calls. I do paperwork and put training together at home. Because of that, I'm able to oversee the short-term rental while I'm home, which is a benefit to me and to the guests. So I don't have any parking problems, either from the business or from the short-term rental, because I have 4 or 5 different parking spots in front of my house, plus a driveway that would hold 4 cars, plus my garage. And so I would like to ask that you reconsider that, and instead, if a home-based business has a problem, has a complaint, that one of the 2 uses be considered at that time. And the second thing, 18-18-6, my other problem there is the wording around no more than 1 lease. I'm a live-in host with multiple guests. Whether it's a family or whether it's individuals coming, I have 1 or 2 people in my rooms. Those people don't necessarily want to rent together, so they might have multiple leases. It doesn't seem to make sense to me that I would have a whole bunch of people coming all the time on 1 lease. Instead, it would be 1 or 2 people at a time. And so I'd like to suggest that instead of a single lease, allow multiple leases. And the solution would be to allow multiple leases with a maximum of 2 occupants per bedroom as a rule. And I'd be glad to discuss any of my experiences that I've had so far as a short-term rental, but I'd hate to see my business closed for either of these reasons.
Thank you, Mindy. Any questions? Well, I guess the first question is, are we, because this is an ordinance that we will be looking at later, is there anything we need to do now?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an opportunity to ask any questions of staff. So Brooke Sabota, our Director of Planning, is available. Our City Attorney is available. So we're here to answer any questions. We don't have any formal presentation tonight.
Council? Any questions? Aaron?
Go ahead, Catherine. I guess I would just ask Brooke to come up and kind of go over some of the options that you're talking about and the impact that it would have one way or the other.
Okay. Thank you, Mindy. Brooke?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brooks Svoboda, Director of Planning and Development. Staff had the opportunity to meet with Mindy prior to the public hearing tonight, and she expressed her concerns to staff. I point out that the first request tonight for consideration of a home occupation, commercial or retail uses in conjunction with a short-term rental was more or less that there is a wide array of different types of home occupations and not knowing what the combined impact would otherwise be. We took a more conservative approach in terms of saying no to having both. However, I don't know that it would necessarily be unreasonable that in the event that there was a joint use, that so long as there's not a complaint or we observe any sort of blatant violations as we've prescribed under our enforcement provisions for short-term rental as well as the other provisions we have in the code for home occupation, that we wouldn't be able to enforce or act against any type of concerns like that. Primarily, the underlying motivation for the policy as it's drafted tonight was to address the concerns to the impacts to the neighborhood and not necessarily to the people who would otherwise be renting. There's a lot more complicated and more vigorous policies out there throughout the Front Range as well as the country. But primarily, because of the history and what we've known to be, historical code enforcement issues that are related to number of people living in home occupations, we took a more conservative approach to sort of look at that. Once again, I don't know that it would necessarily be unreasonable to consider, but those were some of the counterbalances to the consideration when we put this policy together. With regards to the second request regarding putting a cap on the number, or one, to allow multiple leases at the same time to different individuals, and putting a cap to 2 people per bedroom. I would say that I would leave that up to the council for their consideration on that. In terms of impacts, I think the conversation that we had with the request with Mindy was, that not always does a single tenant or a single renter with a family come in one vehicle per se. There may be multiple vehicles involved. And so I think it could also be something where we could evaluate and consider that request and see what type of impacts we may or may not have. I mean, it's something we can always go back and amend. I will say that we are also, this is our first policy. In the February of this year, we adopted the UDO, which enacted the ability to allow for the use, but we did not have the policy and regulations to actually manage the use. And so in March, we brought that to you in a study session, and then we've since brought it back in a policy form. And I'll defer to Corey if there's anything else you'd like to add to that.
The only thing I would add is from the study session, this ordinance was drafted to attempt to address impacts on neighbors. There's a lot of different models for short-term rental regulations. This was intended to address impacts. As it relates to home occupation, I would suggest it's either in or it's out, because frankly, to try to enforce otherwise would be difficult, if not impossible, to only address those home occupations combined with short-term rentals that were impacting the neighborhood. Which one goes? And so from an enforcement perspective, I would suggest that would be difficult. As it relates to the occupancy, that was discussed extensively at the study session. This isn't one sort of accepted methodology for trying to limit the impact on neighbors. Again, I would suggest if council desires to do it as an occupants per room, it could certainly do so, but I'm going to suggest it would be extremely difficult from an enforcement perspective if there are impacts on the neighbors to go and count people in a room. Whereas having one lease per night from an enforcement perspective and based on the impact on the neighborhood is a way to address council's concern rationally and easier to enforce.
So to add on to that just a little bit, I believe the business has been in operation for approximately a year, maybe a little bit longer. I am wondering, do we have any complaints in that area?
No.
Any kind of
No,
issues at all?
I will tell you that, as I said in the study session, we had not had any complaints. Prior to the study session, we've actually had one complaint with a property in Village Greens. It turns out that they were promoting it as up to 16 people. And so it was being used in an inappropriate way. We have since addressed that with the property owner, and they've since corrected that. But that, in my history here with the community, is the only known complaint that we've received for short-term rental.
Thanks.
Meredith?
So the proposal was to discuss people per room. Can we discuss vehicles per lease? Like, can you say one vehicle per lease?
So again, if you have 2 people per room
Uh-huh.
and 3 leases, so let's say you have a 4-bedroom home
Okay,
and 1 vehicle per room
right.
or per lease, that would be 3 additional vehicles. And the question is whether that's sort of an acceptable way to address the impacts on the neighborhood and have the same roughly number of cars that a residential use without a short-term rental would have.
So the reason I was thinking about that is if it's not a short-term rental, but like a roommate situation, you are possibly going to have 1 vehicle per room anyway.
And that's why I said this is one rational way to address it. If council wants to do it a different way, you certainly can. But this is a nice way to be able to enforce it and have it.
Because I was asking if we could do vehicles instead of.
You could, it's going to be difficult to enforce.
I think it's easier to count cars than it is to go inside the home and count people in the space, but you can see the cars from the outside, yes?
How many homes does the primary resident have? Or how many cars does the primary resident have? So that's why you have to actually allocate a car to a lease agreement. And for us, from an enforcement perspective, that's more difficult. Maybe not impossible, but much more difficult.
Hilda?
So, first of all, Mindy, thank you so much for coming up. And you've advocated so much for yourself throughout this whole process, and I really appreciate that. I know you met with staff, and, thank you so much for just coming here and, making your case. I think it's great that, you did that. That's great. So a couple of things that I was thinking is I actually think we should just remove H&I, so, remove prohibiting any type of retail or commercial activities. Again, I know that we're trying to be conservative here. This is our first time kind of going through this policy process. We don't know what kind of hiccups we're gonna see down the way. But we have had people who have been operating short-term rentals in our city for decades and who have done it very, very well and very responsibly. I have one that's at the bottom of my block, and they are amazing. They are bringing people to our community from all over the world. I think they actually add a lot to our community. So I understand we are always concerned about cars and parking and things like that, but I really feel like we should be focusing on bad actors as they come. We haven't seen many so far, and people have been operating them for many years in Northglenn. So I feel like I would support removing both H and I, just those 2 lines, so that we're not kind of putting her business at risk. And then, for those houses that do have multiple rooms to rent, that's an option for them.
Jenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brooke, I'm wondering if we were to eliminate I, is there a way in the lease or in the application for a license to distinguish between the number of rooms versus just the single property that's being rented? And that way perhaps we can keep an eye on how things go? If we start to see an increase in concerns or complaints about individual properties versus properties that are only leasing to a single person.
We
or
could
to a single
certainly,
family.
yeah, we could certainly, I think, on the application, ask how many separate leases per home do you, are available. And then we could track it that way, certainly.
Okay, and then I didn't see any sort of restriction on total number of people that are allowed to be in the home. Is there any reason why? I mean, I heard the rationale around occupants per one single room, but I didn't know about individual households.
What we default to is the building code, which has occupancy restrictions on the total number if we have an issue with the total number of people in a home. But again, we could certainly use the 2 persons per room as suggested by the individual at the public hearing. Just know that from a enforcement perspective, that's going to be extremely difficult to enforce when we do have complaints.
Thank you.
I have a couple things. I would just like to express my opinion. I think that retail should stay in on H. Mindy's business is not a retail per se business. I mean, it has a retail component from that they buy from you, but it's not like the person who has a candle making business out of the garage and they're selling it like that. So it's not like you would have people coming by the house all the time to purchase those retail products. And that's what I really think that we have to stick with, the resale portion of it. Somehow, I think there has to be confined around that, because if you have people coming to your home anyhow because you're selling something, you're doing hair or something like that, and then you want to do the short-term rental too, there's gonna be a conflict somewhere down the road. And because this is actually it's going into our code, I don't think that we can take the approach of dealing with the bad actors as they come along, you know? Mindy has a great parking situation where she is, and she has extra parking and everything. I don't. And, you know, it's for the people like me that would want to do it. You know, Mindy has the perfect setup where she is, but I don't have that kind of thing. And I think that we have to look at it more globally and not just, I don't want to do anything that affects her business or her livelihood or anything like that. But I think that we have to look at it globally and not just based on one person's business. I would like to meet all of your business needs, but I would also like to make sure that we are looking at the city as a whole and determining that whatever we do with this, it's for the best of the city. You know, I think that's very important moving forward. And I don't, you know, I'm all for home businesses, you know, I'm all for that. We run 2 out of our house too. I am totally for it, but I'm not for being able to do resale or retail, you know, in a home.
Marcy?
So, clarifying question for the retail or commercial activities, it's not just restrictive to the fact that it's retail, right? You're saying conjunction of a home-based business, period.
Right, and so as I'm listening to this conversation, one option in terms of amending subsection H, if you look at our home occupation ordinance, there's really 3 things that it tries to address, much the same as short-term rental. One is customers, one is deliveries, and then the other is employees. So, for example, if you wanted to limit it, you could say no commercial or retail activities that either have deliveries, customers, or employees. And so then you'd be sort of consistent with the short-term rental ordinance, differentiating those home occupations that have an impact on their neighbors and those that don't.
And just follow up on that. So, the once home-based business myself, I have to say, I think it's a little bit of a challenge. I mean, we ask businesses to be a legit home-based business, to pull a license, to submit sales tax, and you get sales tax. You see that number on your report every month for financials. And it doesn't necessarily mean that a business has someone coming. So I think if we're gonna look at that language, then we have to look at it a little bit differently. Just because I have a home-based business that's shipping retail, it could be I'm sending printing that never even hits my door, but because my business is here, I have to get taxed. So, I mean, there's a lot of variables that come into play with that are a little tricky to just say no retail, because I think that's hard to limit it. I'm not sure what that looks like exactly, but I wouldn't be for saying no retail, but any other commercial, because I think that impacts too many of our businesses. I'm in favor of removing it and paying attention to it and evaluating it should it arise to be an issue. But with that also being said, you mentioned it's either in or it's out. What do you see as the issue of enforcement around the home-based business and short-term rentals?
It's differentiating between the impacts of each. because they're the same impact. Again, when you look at parking, when you look at limiting the number of employees which are in home occupations, when you're looking at deliveries, which is vehicular traffic, you're trying to address the same impacts on the neighborhood in both ordinances. And so it would be difficult to differentiate when you have issues on impacts on the neighborhood. Is it the home occupation or is it the?
And I will add that from a code enforcement standpoint, home occupation is the single most difficult thing that we enforce against. Because a lot of times we have people running home businesses who have not signed the affidavits, and then trying to prove that there's a home occupation business. I think one of them that comes to mind, it was in Village Greens, where people were complaining about someone working in their backyard on vehicles, using welding equipment, and the guy says, well, this is my personal business, it's not a business, it's my personal hobby, I'm not making any money or anything, I'm not transacting. We didn't find anything at the Secretary of State that he had registered or anything. And then finally, his father called and gave him up because he was done with the noise and said, no, he's running a business out of the house. And so we were able to enforce against it. But, and that's a great example because I think we probably had at least a half a dozen complaints from every single resident that was directly adjacent to them because of the noise. And so those are the type of situations where it's like, you know, that obviously is hard to create the analogy here in this situation, but, you know, the traffic coming and going and things like that, the number of vehicles, et cetera. So, I mean, home occupation is the most difficult thing we enforce against. It's hardest to prove.
Gordon?
Thank you, Mayor. One quick question. I know that we had talked about this in our meeting prior, about you're only able to, I guess, garner a license if you are the actual property owner. The question is why that is the case. If I'm leasing the property, I get a signed authorization, much like they do in Denver, to be able to run a short-term rental out of my home that I'm leasing. That is completely not okay, and why is that?
I would say that when we presented this at the study session, that issue didn't come up.
Okay.
Again, if the council would like to amend that, they certainly can.
Okay, I just didn't know if there was something beyond that.
I think the policy reason is that you expect the property owner to be, as a matter of policy, a little more careful with their property than a tenant.
Yeah.
But that's obvious a value judgment by council.
And I will tell you that our next most difficult case that we enforce against is the number of people, unrelated persons living in a residence under the definition of family. Through the UDO, we provided further clarification of what constitutes that, which makes enforcing a little bit easier. But, you know, once again, I mean, we have people who complain about people's girlfriends coming over and there's four unrelated people living in the house and that there's too many people there, the cars parked all over the neighborhood, et cetera. Once again, these are some of the things that are probably the more vocal complaints that we get that are bigger challenges for code enforcement. And, you know, that's, I think, part of the logic that went behind some of this was to sort of manage that.
That's great. It was just, you know, if you lease the property, and we have a lot of leases within the city, that you still have a chance to partake in the short-term rental process. Obviously, if you have sign authorization from the property owner, and Denver does it well with an authorization form. Signs. So.
Anybody else? I think when we adopted this ordinance, we said it was a living document.
That is correct.
So we have some wiggle room here, right?
And you haven't adopted anything yet because tonight is second reading. So if council is inclined to make amendments, you certainly can on second reading.
Thank you, Brooke. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against 1923? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And we will move on to Stormwater Program Ordinance Revision CB 1929. Joanne, would you read that title, please? 1928.
CB 1928, a bill for an ordinance amending Articles 13 and 17 of Chapter 16 of the Northglenn Municipal Code in compliance with the city's latest municipal separate storm sewer system MS4 permit.
Okay, I will now open the public hearing for 1928. Is there anyone who would like to speak either for or against CB 1928? For or against 1928? Going once? Strong. Close the public hearing there. And we will move on to CB 1929. Joanne, would you read the title, please?
A bill for an ordinance amending sections 9-8-1 and 18-2-10 of the Northglenn Municipal Code concerning 3.2% beer.
Okay, I will now open the public hearing for CB 1929. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against CB 1929? For or against CB 1929? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and move on to item D, CB 1930. Would you read the title, Joanne?
A bill for a special ordinance approving a franchise agreement between the City of Northglenn and Public Service Company of Colorado to provide gas and electricity service in the City of Northglenn pursuant to the terms of such franchise agreement.
I will now open the public hearing for CB 1930. Is there anyone who would like to speak either for or against 1930? Seeing
Mr. Mayor, Preston Gibson again with Excel. I'm just here to answer any questions you may have. Other than that, I have no presentation.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? No? Then nobody else is here. We'll close the public hearing and move on. Okay, ordinance is second reading. Joanne, would you read the title?
The first one is on CB 1923, a bill for an ordinance adding a new Article 18 to Chapter 18 of the Northglenn Municipal Code entitled Short-Term Rental Properties.
Move for approval.
Moved in second?
We need a second.
Jordan, second.
Somebody second?
Looking up.
So Corey, what would be the procedure? I mean, if we were to look at it and say that we wanted to remove H and J, or whatever they were, I and H and I.
To suggest an amendment, move to amend.
Okay, just like.
I move to amend that we remove both H and I under section 18-18-6.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. Open the vote, Joanne?
So then we're voting on the amendment.
On the amendment
On the
only.
amendment.
On the
On the
amendment only.
amendment only. Perfect.
The vote is open. I'll close that vote, and the motion to amend passes unanimously.
Oh, Mindy.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And now,
Antonio, I have another amendment I'd like to throw out there.
I'm sorry?
I have another amendment I'd like to throw out there.
Oh, okay.
So I'd move to amend E under section, what is it? I guess 18-18-4. So accessory dwelling units, to exclude those. I personally believe that accessory dwelling units should be able to be used as short-term rentals as long as the occupant is in the main primary house. I know that we had this conversation earlier, and I know that many of you guys have different feelings, but I do support that our neighbors should be allowed to, one, construct an ADU and then use it for short-term rentals if they choose. As long as they are living on the property in the main house.
I'm not sure honestly how I feel about that, Julie. I mean, I'm not.
Just how would we allow it to be able to be read within this as well in a certain section and to make sure that the language is correct? If you're gonna put a stipulation such as you have to be present on the premise when renting out an accessory unit.
So right now, the ordinance does not require this to be a primary residence.
Yeah.
It is easy to delete the accessory dwelling unit language from the ordinance. It would frankly change the entire ordinance to say you can use the accessory dwelling unit, but only for the primary resident.
I don't think.
We would have to go back to the drawing board on the entire structure of the ordinance.
I'm not.
That's my opinion. What do you guys think?
I'm not comfortable with it.
I'm just curious, though, how is allowing an accessory dwelling unit to be rented any different than allowing every single room in your home to be rented out? Like, that's what I'm struggling with. Like, how is it any different?
So I have, as we've talked about these, I'm not a huge fan of ADUs in general. And so I feel like it's, as we have had conversation after conversation, we've gone after the purpose of the ADU, and we never talked about it being used for that purpose. We talked about it being used for children and elderly parents, or family members. And so that's why I'm not comfortable.
Very well said.
Right? Do you have a, Marcy?
Does our ordinance, does it, the code actually say, I mean, it doesn't specify that it has to be like family members in an ADU to begin with, right?
The ADU policy specifically does not allow for short-term rental. You can rent out the ADU for long-term, but not for short-term. And there are stipulations to that.
Right, but it's the long-term side of it that we intended it to be rented out, but we didn't specify it to.
It specifically does
parameter
not
of
allow
that.
for short-term rental.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
So in order to have the motion go forward, at least, it still needs a second, I believe.
Okay, I guess the motion fails. That's the nice way to say it. I don't think that, but.
So I think, so the motion dies for lack of a second.
Okay.
So now you have in front of you the ordinance as amended by with the deletion of subsections H and I of section 18-18-6.
I have one more question.
Jenny?
So we've talked so many times that I'm just not entirely clear anymore. So do we require at all that a homeowner or a property owner be on site while there are short-term rentals happening?
The current version of the ordinance does not.
Okay, so in the event that we have a home with an accessory dwelling unit and a primary structure, that means that the primary structure could have 4 rooms being completely rented out throughout the house and somebody who's a long-term renter perhaps in the accessory dwelling unit. And the property owner could live somewhere in California or wherever.
Yeah. Primary residence.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
I thought we said that to have an ADU, the primary residence has to,
Has to
like, they
live
have
there.
to live somewhere. They either live in the ADU or they live in the
The
home.
primary.
Yeah, I thought that's
So
what it
what I
was.
could see happening is the primary resident lives in the ADU, and then short-term rentals all the rooms in the home.
I would need to look that up to confirm. I did not commit the ADU right tonight.
That's okay.
But certainly, even under this ordinance, the primary resident could certainly live in the accessory dwelling unit and comply with the ordinance.
Yeah.
And have the primary portion of the residence devoted entirely to a short-term rental. That would be allowed even under the definition of ADU in the Unified Development Ordinance.
I'm pretty sure we said they have to live on the property to have an ADU.
I
how I
am
remember it.
too.
One or the other.
Yeah. We're waiting for partition. Pretty good. We're getting closer, Bruce? Yeah.
I'm trying.
He's working hard.
Unfortunately, I cannot do a word search on my phone.
Corey, what's our definition for a long-term versus a short-term?
It is in the ordinance, and it's basically, and it's 30 days becomes long-term, less than 30 is not.
Okay, thank you.
And that's consistent with how we tax.
Okay.
So our lodging tax, for example, applies if it's less than 30 days. If it's more than 30 days, it doesn't.
And just a quick question, if you have technically a long-term tenant who is on a month-to-month lease, how is that regulated?
We don't regulate that.
Okay.
So what the city regulates is currently through its taxing power for lodging tax purposes. And so part of this is through the application process for a short-term rental, but we don't regulate long-term rentals at all.
Thank you.
Oh, no, I'm trying to find it for us.
I know, I know. I'm pretty sure we said
So
that
it says
someone
the
had
owner of the
this.
property on which the ADU is located shall be required to reside in either the primary dwelling unit or in the ADU. And then ownership of the ADU may not be legally severed from ownership of the associated lot and any other structure on such lot.
So it did say, or in the ADU?
Or the owner of the property on which the ADU is located shall be required to reside in either the primary dwelling unit or in the ADU.
Okay.
Where
So-
section are you referring to?
So it's on page 60, it's D, then 1, then B, then I.
So then under that definition, as I indicated, the primary owner could live in the ADU and rent out the main residence as the short-term rental.
I've participated in that. Indiana, local situation.
Yeah.
I would suggest that we leave it as it is in that.
So can we move on and?
So
vote
right now,
on-
you have a motion on the floor to approve the ordinance
As
as
amended.
amended, with the
Second.
deletion of H and I.
Second.
It's already on the floor.
It's already on, yeah.
Okay. Open the vote.
The vote is open.
Well, somehow or another, I got signed off.
She signed up again?
Oh,
So did I.
we keep getting signed off, so, let's see here. Okay. All right. Yeah. I got it. Okay.
I'll close that vote, and CB 1923, as amended on second reading, passes unanimously.
Thank you. That's
I know.
PB 1928. Go ahead.
A bill for an ordinance amending Articles 13 and 17 of Chapter 16 of the Northglenn Municipal Code in compliance with the city's latest municipal separate storm sewer system MS4 permit.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, open the vote, please.
The vote is open. I'll close that vote, and CB 1928 on second reading passes unanimously.
PB 1929. Go ahead.
A bill for an ordinance amending sections 9-8-1 and 18-2-10 of the Northglenn Municipal Code concerning 3.2% beer.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? Open the vote, Joanne.
The vote is open. I'll close that vote, and CB 1929 on second reading passes unanimously.
PB 1930, Joanne.
A A bill for a special ordinance approving a franchise agreement between the City of Northglenn and Public Service Company of Colorado to provide gas and electricity service in the City of Northglenn pursuant to the terms of such franchise agreement.
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion?
Mayor,
Heather?
I'd just like to add for the public's benefit, and as staff has previously expressed to council, going through our franchise negotiations with Xcel Energy, there were really 2 points of concern that staff raised. Again, that I've previously communicated to you as well as our city attorney. Those are outlined on page 2 of the memo, which indicates the definition of a public project. We had a disagreement with Xcel Energy in hoping that urban renewal authorities could be included in the definition of a public project, and this is something that Xcel Energy did indicate they were not willing to do with our franchise agreement. Additionally, in section 10.2, third-party use of company electric distribution poles, we had requested what we refer to as aspirational non-binding language to address these concerns regarding small cell facilities on Xcel poles, and as I've outlined in the memo, Xcel said no to that. So just wanted council, just to reiterate to council as well as the public's benefit, that those were 2 asks that staff had made during the negotiation process.
So can we ask Preston to come forward and kind of address those 2 issues, please?
Thank you. So I should consider the public hearing then reopened, I guess. So thank you. I appreciate that. Let me begin by saying that we had extensive negotiations with the city on this application, on this franchise agreement. One thing they didn't point out in their staff report is the many places that we actually amended to agree with staff. Because we submitted an application, we submitted a draft agreement, they came back with I'd say an extensive amount of red line changes. And we went through those changes and made many changes based on those red lines. There was a couple of final points. These are those 2 final points where we were unable to reach final agreement. And let me tell you, I'm going to address one of those, and that's regarding putting cell towers on our distribution poles. And then our attorney is going to actually answer the other one. First of all, we have been working very closely with the city and with cell service providers on their new 5G program. You're probably aware that that's the latest and newest technology. We've gone from 3G to 4G to 4G LTE, now to 5G. And 5G is going to require an enormous amount of poles, a lot more poles than 3G or 4G required. And we worked extensively with all the major cell providers, Verizon and T-Mobile and Sprint and AT&T, all the major providers, on a master agreement where we could thereby replace an existing streetlight pole with a stronger pole to put their equipment within that streetlight pole. We call it a dual-use program or dual-use pole. And the way that works is we would eliminate one streetlight pole, put the existing pole, put a new pole in its place that would contain that transmitter equipment either internally or externally to the pole. It's something that in the city of Northglenn, I know it's important in terms of pollution of your right-of-way, creating additional poles and so on. And so we worked extensively not only with our cell providers that are the major providers in the country, but also with your team here, with your staff. And the agreement is that we won't allow that to happen unless the city staff says, yes, it's acceptable, this pole should be or can be replaced. And then that cell provider would pay to replace that pole with this stronger pole, so you don't have any additional poles in your right-of-way. So that's a program that's very popular, and it's going to be popular, I think, throughout our entire service territory. In terms of the distribution poles, we couldn't quite get there. And I'll tell you why, is that this is an industry that is very much in its infancy. The rules are still being written in this industry. The other thing I think I would say is that we have a hot zone, it's called a hot zone, which is close to our power line. So when you start looking at distribution poles, it's a different animal than when you're just simply looking at a streetlight pole. Streetlight poles make sense. When you start having companies within that hot zone that are very close to very high voltage wires, it's just not safe. Now, I will say this, though. We do have agreements with many companies to allow attachments to those poles, cable companies and so on, that attach wires, and they are below our wires. You've seen telephone wires that are on the same poles. You've seen cable TV wires that are on those same poles, but they're below out of that hot zone. But nevertheless, we have an agreement with them. I'm not saying that we won't ever allow it. We may allow it. Your staff was simply looking for us to say, hey, this might be a really good idea for us to look at in the future. And it may be, when the industry advances and gets to the point where they want to locate on those poles. By the way, they haven't asked us to do that. They want to replace the streetlight poles. Then we'll get there. I mean, we could well get there, and we'd be glad to have those discussions at the time. We just haven't been approached by those cell providers yet. So at any rate, just for those reasons, and just adding a statement that said that it seems like a good idea, it doesn't really do anything. But we will continue to look at the industry, see how it progresses, and so on. I would also say that in addition to cable TV wires and telephone wires on those poles, we do allow the city to put emergency signage on those poles. You can use those as a city to put signage up, directional signage and so on, because it's not close to the wires. And that's right in the franchise agreement. It allows that. So it's for those reasons that the industry's just not there. There are some safety hazards, some things we need to get through. And before we're going to allow any attachments of these new 5G cells on distribution poles, we're going to have to work very closely with the industry on master agreements, just like we did to allow them to use these dual-use streetlight poles. So, and they have not, as of yet, asked us to do that. Again, it may happen in the future, but we're just not there yet. So.
I have a quick question. So, Preston, you keep telling us that the technology is not there. So if we approve this franchise agreement and the technology gets there in 20 years, how does that work?
Well, this doesn't preclude us from doing it. I mean, that's the interesting thing, is this franchise agreement doesn't preclude us from being able to do that in the future, being able to add that in the future. I think we work, again, with the cell providers to be sure they wanted to do it and get that master agreement with them so we can do it safely and responsibly. And then, in addition, we'd also work with the city to be sure it met your ordinances and your requirements.
Corey?
And Mr. Gibson's exactly right, that this doesn't preclude it. I think the city staff's frustration was that Excel was unwilling to consider language that simply said we would talk about it. And that's what the language was. And they felt uncomfortable that was somehow, and I think in the response we got, that there's so much legislation ongoing with small cell providers, they didn't want to put any language whatsoever related to small cell facilities. The city staff's goal ultimately is to reduce the proliferation of facilities in the city rights of way. And that's why we wanted the aspirational language to keep open the discussion. And that's what Excel said no to.
And may I add that we do agree with that, to minimize the proliferation of additional poles in the right of way. That's why we have the dual-use poles for the street lights. Eventually, because this industry, I mean, nobody even knew about 5G until recently. It's in its infancy. And at some point, we may be putting allow them to put those cells on our distribution poles. We're just not there yet.
Any more questions? Meredith?
Well, I'm just looking at the memo, and the memo language isn't matching necessarily what I'm hearing. And so there's a sentence that says, Excel apparently believes, just weird phrasing, the requested language gives the city veto power over Excel poles. That, to me, doesn't say that you're not wanting to have the discussion. So I guess I just want to hear from the city what that language is about.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Lighty, for that question. It's staff's interpretation by not, Excel not agreeing to put this language in the franchise agreement. Preston mentioned a master agreement, which would be a separate document from the Excel franchise agreement. So the purpose of tonight's discussion and the action being requested is approval of the franchise agreement. So to Preston's point, certainly if the technology gets there, 5 years, 10 years, whatever that time frame is, we could enter into a master agreement, but that's not the Excel franchise agreement, which is being approved for consideration for approval by council this evening. So the language that you have in the memo was based on our negotiation, and the answer being no, that they wouldn't allow it to be put into the franchise agreement. So I don't know if that helps clarify.
Well, let me answer the
This is
different.
talking about jurisdiction over
Yeah.
the,
Well,
which is not his response right now, so that's why I was.
well, they're connected.
Yeah, I think it's both, because
Okay.
the PUC has certain jurisdiction over things the franchise agreement doesn't. And so I think Excel's point was there's all these other layers of rules and regulations still evolving, and PUC regulation is one of them. There may be PUC rules in the future that relate to small cell providers. From staff's perspective, regardless of the other layers, we just wanted language we were going to talk about it. And that's what Excel rejected.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I think that
Well, I'm just wondering, is there any consideration tonight, you agreeing to putting something in? I mean, you're pretty much saying that if it changes, we'll probably agree to it. Why can't we put words in there like this? I mean, just because you're not, the franchise agreements with other cities does not have, it really doesn't matter to me, one way or the other. It's all north, I know, so.
Well, if I, and may I just respond to that? And I appreciate that. First, let me, in response, say this. If we could take a look at the language in paragraph 10.2, it says, if requested in writing by the city, the company may allow other companies who hold franchises or otherwise have obtained consent from the city to use the streets, utilize company electric distribution poles in city streets and other city property, subject to the tariffs, for the placement of their facilities upon approval by the company, and agreement upon reasonable terms and conditions, including payment of fees established by the company. I think that would potentially allow what we're talking about. It doesn't say that we're precluding the potential to place 5G cells on our distribution poles. Currently, we're not allowing it because, number one, nobody's asked for it. I mean, we don't have any companies asked for it. We don't have a master agreement. We somehow have to come to an agreement with the cell providers to be sure that everything is done in a safe and responsible manner. We also have, as Mr. Hoffman said, we have Public Utilities Commission review. We have to look at regulations that they're going to be approving in that regard. So the reality is that we're not saying that we're not allowing it. We're saying that we don't want to just put statements in our franchise agreement that say, yeah, maybe this is a good idea and we should encourage it. I don't think that's where we're headed. And if we do want to make any changes to the language, we'd have to take it back. I mean, I can't unilaterally approve any changed languages this evening. But we take it back and have a further discussion about it with our team.
So the other question I have is, when do we have to have this vote done and move forward? When's the deadline?
Yeah, our existing franchise expires in mid-August, so this proposed franchise is slated to take effect on August 18th. I believe it's August 17th is the expiration of our current franchise agreement.
So we do have a little bit of time.
We do.
May I also add that we like to have PUC approval before that date as well.
Right.
So, if at all possible.
I feel like we're just leaning too far into this, but maybe I'm just not reading it right. But to paraphrase 10.2, doesn't it say, if requested in writing, this may actually happen?
It does, but it doesn't address small cell providers at all. And so here's what's happening in the real world, is that we have master license agreements with small cell providers that says, in order to come to the city with a new pole, you have to show us that you've gone to other utility companies with a proposal to put it on their pole and that it somehow doesn't work. And for all the reasons that Mr. Gibson has described, it may not work. We recognize that. But what we wanted was corresponding language in the Excel franchise agreement that simply says that they will look at these. And so it really was aspirational, not obligations at all. And for the reasons Mr. Preston or Mr. Gibson described, Excel said, no, we don't even want to put language that we will talk about it. He's saying they will, and I appreciate that, but they didn't want the language in the agreement.
And I'd also, if I could say that aspirational language is essentially meaningless.
It is, but we wanted it to correspond with the master license agreement so that we had something in the Excel agreement that the small cell providers could look at and say, okay, they will at least be receptive to us coming and talking to them about whether we can place our facilities on theirs.
And may I just say, we'd be receptive to the discussion with small cell providers.
You won't put it in writing?
I'm not able to put it in writing again this evening. I'm just one of a number of members on our team.
I personally would like you to take it back, see if we could get some kind of words in there. I mean, understanding that maybe they are meaningless, but they are in there so that we have addressed the issue. We have August, so this is June 24th. So I think we've got a little bit of time.
If council is inclined to continue this for what, you could certainly continue it to the July 8th meeting. Give us time to see if we can get resolution, and if not, you may have the same version. But it'll give us time to at least allow Mr. Gibson to take it back. And we have one more issue as well that I know Ms. White wants to address.
So should we, okay.
Marcy?
Just a clarification on when you're using the term master agreement, you mean the agreements that we have with the people that we've approved,
Correct.
not this master agreement that Preston.
Correct. It is agreements
So-
between the city and the small cell providers.
So your intent is that you want to see language that is in this franchise agreement that reflects back what we've chosen as a city? And are we the first city to adopt something that has those agreements?
No. Many cities have master license agreements with small cell providers.
May I also add that we also have the master agreements between Excel Energy and those cell providers. And this would be, in this case of this franchise agreement, this would be the first instance where we had ever put language, aspirational language, in it regarding the 5G service or cell service on our distribution poles. When we start looking at sort of treading new ground for no apparent reason that other than aspirationally, our company gets concerned about that. And all of a sudden, we're in that dialogue with every city for, again, an industry that is just now, and it's essentially just now getting started. You've probably seen very few 5G poles here in Northglenn at this point. Where it makes most sense, again, to them is they've asked about the streetlight poles. We've worked diligently with them for about 2 years on master agreements so we could allow that, allow those dual-use poles, replacing those streetlight poles and putting those cells in them. I'm not sure they're even interested in operating, putting cells near our high-tension, 30, 40,000 volt, distribution lines, and even higher voltage transmission lines. So to us, we respectfully request that the City Council adopt this agreement as written, knowing that, and with my commitment, that we will look at that at the time when it makes sense to us. We just rather not put it in the agreement.
So just one follow-up to that. I'm hooked on this word aspiration. So the aspirational to excel because you haven't had the requests, but the city's had requests and we've filled 3. Where does it become aspirational? I'm just asking.
Let me try to answer it. It is not obligating Excel to do anything other than have a discussion. So that's why we've used the term aspirational. It is simply saying We're not saying you have to put these on your facilities at all. We're saying at least have a conversation with the small cell providers.
Meredith?
So back to the memo again. While there were 2 areas that were concerns, the staff recommends approval. So I guess I'm kind of stuck in this balance of we're having conversations about the staff concerns, but the staff ultimately recommends that we approve.
At the end of the day, staff believes you should approve the XL franchise agreement. That's what, and XL was unequivocal in their statements that these 2 issues, they were not willing to compromise on. And so staff's recommendation reflects XL's statements to us in the franchise negotiations that they were unwilling to waver on these 2 issues. And we still believe, even if they are unwilling to waiver on those 2 issues, that ultimately staff recommends approval.
Can we talk about the public project issue?
The second issue.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, city staff. My name is Carolyn White. I'm with Brownstein Hyatt Farber-Schreck, and I'm representing Public Service Company of Colorado on this matter. And my mission is to answer that particular question for you, which is to explain why it is their position not to make the change requested by city staff to the definition of public project. Let me first briefly say the reason why that matters is found in section 6.9 of the agreement, which is about relocation. And basically, if a city public project requires XL facilities to be relocated, then that relocation must be accomplished at XL's cost. So XL absorbs the cost when it's a public project. So the proposal to add to the definition of public project, not only city projects and city-funded projects, but NURA projects, would expand the circumstances in which XL has to bear the cost of that relocation. Specific to adding NURA to that definition, some of you probably know, and I know the city attorney knows, I make my living doing urban renewal projects, so it's not because there's any sort of opposition or concern about urban renewal projects. But there is a fundamental difference between the city and the Urban Renewal Authority. They are legally separate entities. City projects are not necessarily, by definition, urban renewal projects and NURA projects. And NURA could undertake a project which has no city funding or no city participation or no city property involved in it at all. And NURA is not a party to this agreement. It's only between the city and Public Service Company of Colorado. So there's some sort of fundamental reasons, but then more specifically to NURA in particular and urban renewal, it is our read of the statute that the whole purpose behind the statute of accomplishing the public purpose goals of remedying blight in the statute, in the urban renewal statute, are designed to be achieved to the maximum extent possible through private investment. And there's a couple places in the statute where it mentions that relocation of public utilities or construction of public utilities are costs which are eligible to be paid using tax increment financing, the main financing tool of urban renewal. So Public Service Company's position is really that there already is a mechanism, a statutory mechanism available to potentially finance if and when a relocation is necessary because of an urban renewal project. And that is not the case when we're talking about a city project or a public project. And then finally, although I will claim not that I am the total expert on these matters of how the PUC approves the rates that are set by public service, it is true that those rates are set territory-wide, not just city by city, franchise by franchise. And so if Public Service Company were to absorb these broader category of costs for Northglenn and not do it for any of the other cities, then essentially there's a broader pool of customers that are potentially subsidizing the relocation costs associated with NURA projects. Now, that's already true today with relocation costs occasioned by city projects, but all the franchises have that provision in them, so it's not unfair. All of the citizens are equally sharing in the cost when it's a public city project, but that's not the case when it's an urban renewal project. So for those reasons, Public Service has indicated that they're not comfortable broadening that definition in this franchise because it would expand the potential cost and the potential cost to customers for projects which potentially have other sources of revenue to finance those relocation costs.
Corey?
Just quickly, one of the core powers of an urban renewal authority is the installation, construction, or reconstruction of streets and utilities. That is public infrastructure that Excel, by their language, is excluding. And I guess I'd put a finer point on it. The city council is currently talking about ultimately redeveloping this site. And I know that one of the options that is currently being considered is that NURA would finance the construction of the horizontal infrastructure. And so this is going to be a significant issue that the city and NURA will have to work through in order to relocate facilities that are XL facilities and existing right-of-way that NURA dollars may pay for.
If I may just add one thing, I mean, the sections you quoted from the statute, I totally agree with. It's envisioned in the statute that urban renewal will take care of public utilities. It also says that they have other sources of revenue authorized to do that. But to the question of public project, if, for example, you did, through a combination of NURA and city efforts, refinance or, pay for the construction of a new building on this facility, depending on how you did it, it arguably could fall within the definition of public project as it's written today without adding NURA. Because if the city, if it's wholly owned by the city, at least 50% or more of the funding is provided by any combination of the city, federal government, state of Colorado, et cetera, but excluding Title 32 special districts. So if the city is playing a role in it, it's a public project. But if it's exclusively a NURA project with no role by the city under this franchise, it's not a public project, and Public Service Company thinks that's the way it should be.
Okay, Marcy?
Is that on the record that if the city is doing this project, which we are, that you're saying that it's a candidate for the public project?
I'm saying if it falls within the definition of 1.16 in this franchise, which as just described to me in one sentence, I think it probably is, then yes, it would be a public project.
On the record, you're saying
But
yes.
it's going to be governed by that 1.16 the way it's written today.
And I guess I just want to say one other thing. So what doesn't work for me in the conversation of kind of like, and I get it, you're their attorney pushing back, but what doesn't work for me is for you to say that we're not doing it because another city didn't think to negotiate it into their contract. That just doesn't work. So I'm just saying, like, when you come and you say something, I'm the one that's going to get defensive and say, it doesn't matter to me that another city down the road didn't think about it. I thought of it, they thought of it, someone else thought of it, and we asked for it. So because it doesn't get in there by another city, doesn't apply.
I don't, that's not the reason.
You both have said that twice. You've said that it's unfair to other cities and no other cities have done it. So hence it's not something you want to do in the contract because another city hasn't. The fact that they haven't isn't my problem. Their attorney should do better. Just a statement.
Okay, so we have any more discussion?
So you currently have a motion on the floor to
Right.
approve on second reading, I believe, in its current form. You can certainly proceed with that, or if you want Excel to take either or both of these issues back, you could also move to continue.
So we, yes.
I would like to have Excel take it back and address these two issues, especially since we have a little bit of time. Because in my mind, I'm sitting here thinking, what if we just say no? I mean, what would happen if we said no? I don't know. Tell me, what would happen if we said no to this
That was my
franchise
question.
agreement?
What happens when we,
I'm just asking because I don't know.
To respond to that?
Yeah, certainly, Mr. Gibson can respond. If not, I will.
I'll do my best to respond. We are still obligated to provide gas and electric service within our service territory. You're within our service territory. We'll continue to do that. What you won't get is you won't get franchise fees. We pay 3% of our annual gross electric and gas sales to the city, which is over $800,000 a year. You won't get money for undergrounding overhead electricities, 1% of the gross electric revenues, and all the other benefits of the franchise in terms of us complying with regulations and other things. There's a lot of benefits for the city. I could list them, there's many benefits. Many benefits for the city, many benefits for us as well, by the way. So there's a lot of reason for us to have a franchise agreement, but the biggest thing you wouldn't get franchise fees, you wouldn't get the 1% undergrounding fund. We'd still have to we're still obligated to provide gas and electric service here, is the utility, gas and electric service provider here in this area. So that's it, essentially, but I could go on and on about it if you want to spend a lot of time on it. We could.
And Mr. Gibson, I agree.
That's a first, I don't know.
Kind of took you by surprise.
I know, yeah, I mean, really, you know.
We had enough discussion?
Well, I think I'd like to continue, you know,
Okay.
having it, you know, and I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but I would like to have them go back to the table and work with our staff.
So I don't. To Excel.
I agree with Joyce. In favor. Going back.
My comment onto that is that Preston has told us that they are not going to make any changes. We're going to end up extending this out 2 weeks, and they're going to come back with the exact same answers.
He said, I mean, I know he said no before, they might come back, you don't know that. Would you, I mean, is there any possibility?
Let me, I don't know. I'll just be honest, I don't know. Again, I did want to point out that there were probably dozens of changes that we agreed to, that were requested by the city. These are the last two. These are the last two remaining that we just couldn't get there. And for the reasons we stated. We've had extensive discussion for months on these two issues. And for us to make changes at this point, I'd say is probably unlikely. I can't say for sure it's not going to happen, but it's probably unlikely. So again, I would take it back, but I just respectfully request that you consider adopting it as written. Again, regarding the microcells, the 5G cells, whatever, we haven't had any requests for those to go on distribution poles. When we do, we'll talk about it. I don't think we need aspirational language to get us there. Regarding the other information that was presented by our attorney, that's our position on that matter. But we appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you, all the negotiations we've had for many months with your outstanding team here. And again, we just respectfully request your approval as written. Thank you.
Anybody else? Staff recommended approval. Our city attorney is nodding his head over there every time that we ask him whether we should approve this or not. So I think that's the question before us, either up or down.
Well, and again, I think there's two options. The motion on the floor right now is to approve on second reading. The other option is to move to continue it to the July 8th, 2019 meeting on second reading so that we can revisit these two issues with XL and even see if there's alternate language that would sort of meet in the middle.
Okay, can we get consensus on that?
So I would move for a continuation to July 8th. 8th.
Can I ask one question before we do that? So if we continue until July 8th, does that provide sufficient amount of time for by the PUC, by the new franchise date?
Pardon me, I didn't hear that clearly.
So if we continue this until July 8th, does that provide a sufficient amount of time for this franchise agreement to be reviewed and considered by the PUC prior to when it would go into implementation?
We're getting very close to that. I don't know exactly an answer to your question. We're getting very close because I have certain paperwork that I have to wrap up after. Let's say if you took action to support and approve the agreement tonight, then I can't submit any paperwork to Public Utilities Commission until then you take action on the minutes of this meeting tonight. So that then delays it another couple of weeks because that has to be part of the package. So we start getting further and further out there. So, if you wanted to continue it, I think we could work it out, but it continues to get, we're very close to the deadline at this point. That's what I'm saying.
What's the wishes of council? Marcy?
I think for me, I can live with 10.2. It's not that big of a stress for me. However, the 1.16, I think we can find some compromise language that brings up a little bit more as to what we were going on the record as the saying. I didn't read that in an interpretation, so if that's how it is, then let's just try to get that addressed here, because that's my concern.
And I think there's an opportunity for some potentially tighter language related to neuro projects. I appreciate Excel's concern is that this is private redevelopment. The city of Northglenn is doing a lot of public redevelopment with its urban renewal dollars. And that's, I think, a distinction to Councilmember Whitman's point about the fact that other cities aren't doing it and that it's not in other agreements. Every city that has urban renewal uses its urban renewal authority differently. NURA's current plans based on implementing the city's urban renewal plans do have a lot of public infrastructure as part of it. And so perhaps we can figure out a way to define the term city project a little tighter that would include some NURA projects, but not those that are objectionable to Excel.
I'm just wondering if council can say, like, they want both things or they want one thing so that you're addressing what our expectations are.
Absolutely, that'd certainly help us.
So for me, I'm the most interested in section 1.16 being figured out, and I don't need aspirational language in 10.2.
That's fine.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
So we need a second for my motion now. 'cause-
I'll second.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now, we haven't resolved the first motion, we have a second motion.
No, your motion right now is to continue until July 8th.
Okay.
On second reading, that's the motion on the floor.
Joanne, would you open the vote?
The vote is open.
Can I get clarification? Is it to deal with both issues or the one issue?
I think it's the one issue. That's the direction I got. The definition, yes.
1.16. I'll close that vote, and the motion to continue CB 1930 on second reading to July 8th, 2019 passes with one no vote cast by Councilmember Leidy.
Okay, resolutions. Joanna, would you read the time?
This is for CR 67, a resolution adopting employee guidelines for the city of Northglenn, Colorado.
Move for approval.
Second.
And move to second discussion?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Heather?
Thank you, Mayor Escabel. This item is dealing with the addition of a social media policy to our existing employee guidelines. As you can see, it's added on page 55 with specific guidance on the use of social media for both staff and elected officials, as previously discussed by our city attorney, as well as myself in a study session. Paula Jensen, our Director of Management Services, is here, and she's available to answer any questions. We did proactively send out frequently asked questions regarding this policy to employees earlier this week. And so again, happy to answer any questions that you might have about the policy.
Any questions for Paula or the city manager? I don't have a question, but I have a comment. And in reading that, I noticed that the part on social media appears on the table of contents as page 55, and it's really page 59. So I'm curious if anybody can go by and check every page. We're losing 4 pages somewhere.
Thank you, Mayor, for pointing that out. The page 59 notation is part of the council packet, so it is actually a correct page number notation in the actual employee guideline document.
Thank you. That explains that. I was curious. I'm looking at page 55 and there's, okay.
Understand.
Joanna, would you open the vote?
The vote is open.
Thank you. Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and CR 67 passes unanimously.
CR 68. Joanna, would you read the title, please?
A resolution approving a service agreement between the City of Northglenn and Optum Health Care Solutions LLC for the Fitness Passport Program.
Move to approve. Second.
Moved in second. Heather?
Thank you, Mayor Escabel. This item is a service agreement. We have Michael Stricker, who's our acting Director of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services with us here tonight, who can answer more specific questions.
Any questions for, any discussion? Joanna, would you open the vote?
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and CR 68 passes unanimously.
Okay. CR 69. Joanna, would you read the title, please?
A resolution imposing short-term property rental license fees pursuant to Section 18-18-4 of the Northglenn Municipal Code.
Move for approval. Second.
Moved in second. Heather?
Thank you, Mayor Escabel. Joanna Smaller, City Clerk, has been instrumental in putting this item together, so I'll turn it over to her for any comments.
So CB 1923, which was adopted earlier on second reading, allows fees to be set and imposed for short-term rental licenses. So staff has prepared a cost analysis to develop the fees, which include the anticipated staff time to administer the licensing program, as well as the actual cost of an on-site inspection that's required by the code. You'll also see that staff researched other license fees in other municipalities that are currently regulating short-term rentals, and we've included those amounts. They vary widely. We also included an average of the license fees. The average for the cost of a new license fee is $215, and the average cost of a license renewal is $163. Staff is proposing to impose a new license fee of $175 for Northglenn, and then a renewal fee of $150. Something unique to our ordinance is the allowance of a late renewal fee, and we've proposed that that be $25. I'm happy to answer any questions on how we establish those fee amounts or anything else.
Any questions for Joanna?
I am kind of curious on how you establish those costs. You know, yeah, because they're all over the board. Did you just take the average and then?
Nope, so what we do when we look at a cost analysis for licensing fees, and we've done this with our marijuana license fees and also liquor license fees to some extent, is we prepare a list of the staff that will be involved in administering that licensing program. So of course, the city clerk's office staff has a part in that, planning and development, as far as the zoning verification, finance, because they'll need to verify that a business license has been obtained. So we compiled the cost of the actual staff who will be involved in the process and estimate the time required. So that's one part of it. The extra part in these licenses is a $75 flat fee, and that is for the inspection that would be performed by Safe Built. So that part is added in. So altogether with the estimated staff cost and that inspection, that's where the actual cost came out to be $186.28 for a new license, and so we rounded down to $175. Yeah.
And that includes the inspection, that $175?
Correct. Yep.
So if that's the case, why am I paying $150 for a renewal when I don't need an inspection? Or do I need an inspection?
We have actually included an inspection on renewal. The difference with the renewal is we eliminated the need for the zoning and occupancy verification.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Discussion? Open the vote.
Vote is open.
Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and CR 69 passes unanimously.
Okay. Item 17, discussion items.
70.
Yeah.
We have another resolution.
Number
70.
1,720 quarter.
Yes, we do. CR 70. Joanna, would you read the item, please?
A resolution approving the professional services agreement between the City of Northglenn and Stanley Consultants Incorporated for project administration services for the 120th Avenue Corridor Improvements Project.
Second.
Moved in second. Heather?
Thank you, Mayor Escabel. Brooks Abota, our planning director, is here tonight, and I asked him to provide you with just a brief overview of this item, but also an overall update on our TIP application.
Good evening once again. I'll be brief. Our TIP application was approved by Dr. Cog at their June meeting. Can't believe we're almost through the month. Anyways, the final approval for that and ratification will be done in their August meeting, in which at that time we can then make application to start the process for our IGA with CDOT and then actually get design and engineering underway shortly thereafter. Currently, staff is attending training sessions with regards to the IGA process. I will point out that we've done that before. The purpose for this consideration for this resolution tonight is we use Stanley Engineering to help us with our TIP project for 112th in York. I will tell you that one of the things that's why we have brought this back is because Stanley was so effective and efficient that we actually beat Thornton to getting their non-TIP project out on the street when they were actually ahead of us. Most local jurisdictions probably spend anywhere from 9 to 10 months trying to get the IGA and the permitting for the design through. We got through in 3.5 months working with Stanley. Why is Stanley so good? Well, Stanley actually just happens to be a third-party consultant for CDOT that oversees and reviews all the other applications that come in for TIP. And so we were very strategic in reaching out to them to see if they could help us originally in the previous TIP project, and we believe that the money will be well spent in this case. One of the reasons I say that is because we've done the math and we've put a 3% inflation cost for each year out that we go to construction. And the longer it takes for us to get our approvals, the more expensive it gets. And effectively, under the current schedule that we put in our application, we would be looking at anywhere from a $300,000 to an $800,000 delta in increased cost over time because of inflation. With this approach, we think that we will be able to get this out on the street for bid before the end of 2020. And in doing that, we would be able to lock down the price and hopefully address inflationary costs, which will effectively give us more ability to build more of the project because we will have been able to do it more quickly and get it through the process more efficiently.
Questions for Brooke? Thank you, Brooke. And would you open the vote, please?
Vote is open.
Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and CR 70 passes unanimously.
Okay, now we'll move to the discussion item, mayoral appointments to boards and committees. City Manager Guyer, would you lead this discussion?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Escabel. The purpose of this discussion is to bring to City Council's attention that the mayor has several appointments. The former mayor was appointed to several boards and committees. I believe this document was previously provided to all of City Council. And so ultimately, I'm bringing this forward to City Council this evening and requesting direction on when you would like staff to bring this item back for formal action. The council committees that the former mayor served on included the Finance Committee, the Performance Appraisal Committee. In terms of liaison positions, those included the Northglenn Arts and Humanities, and Northglenn Senior Organization, and then the Police Pension Board. That's actually a required appointment per the position of mayor. And then at the state level, the former mayor was an alternate to the Colorado Municipal League Policy Committee. Yes.
Heather, weren't there also two that we were missing that we had emailed about, including the Metro Mayor's Caucus?
Yes, Metro Mayor's Caucus, and then I'm trying to think what
The
the
Adams
second
County
one's-
Economic Development.
Urban drainage.
It was like a Dr. Cog luncheon that you had mentioned, I think.
And then also I think there's a national mayor's or national mayor's conference or something.
So the city does hold a membership, the position of mayor holds a membership with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I don't believe that has any reoccurring attendance requirements. Off the top of my head, I could have staff look into that. I think that's more of a membership. And then if there's a desire to, and maybe Councilmember Downing, you can speak to that, attend a conference or.
That's exactly right.
okay.
It's just like NLC would be. I mean, so it's optional if the mayor wanted to, have that membership or not attend those meetings.
I think we did pay for the membership.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, we did, yeah.
Adams County hosts the communities within Adams County. We call them AdCog Executive Breakfasts. Those are held monthly, and typically the mayor and myself, we attend those as we're available. And there's a rotation in terms of when Northglenn actually is the host city for that. That's similar to the AdCog dinners that are held on Wednesday evenings, also once a month. I don't believe Northglenn is in the rotation this year. I think we come up for a rotation in 2020. I just can't think of the month off the top of my head. So Metro Mayor's Caucus, AdCog, Urban Drainage Flood Control District.
And we need to check with them because that's a governor's appointment. And so we have to check. Yeah, the mayor's caucus, and that's just an automatic where Antonio would go to that.
It's
I
not
mean,
on.
It's not on that, it's a group, that they attend, so it's a networking.
Well, let me
It's
kick,
not in that.
let me kick this off, and then everybody will get an opportunity to weigh in. I accepted this position as mayor, and I'm willing to take every position that former Mayor Dodge had, but I'm not married to it. If anybody wants something, this is the time to speak up. You want a particular, performance appraisal committee, and you want to be on it?
Oh, well,
We're all on it.
And we're all on that, so I was gonna bring that up, we changed that, so everybody's on that one anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that
I think as mayor, as our new mayor, you should take all those responsibilities that Carol had as a mayor. I think that those are your
Right.
responsibility. The mayor has certain responsibilities, and I like that those are yours.
that's what I was saying. I'm just, if anybody differs with that, I'm okay with it. This is going to be a little bit different council because I plan to utilize everybody. If you don't want to be utilized, all you have to do is tell me I'm busy, I can't do it. But I plan to call on everybody to perform certain functions. If they can, and fine. If they can't, then I'll do it, or it won't get done. But it's going to be a little bit different. But I am willing to step forward and take over every position, so now everybody can weigh in.
Antonio, I would be interested in the senior group. I've done that before, and I'd be happy to help you out with that.
Jenny?
Are you planning on staying on the Adams, being the liaison to the Adams 12 school board? Are you going to continue in that?
That's an interesting question, because I met with Chris Godowski, and City Manager Geyer met with him too, and we had that discussion. And he basically told me that it was a pretty much dead position. If you show up to a meeting, that's fine. But if they needed anything, they would contact me. So it's,
So
I mean, we still should have the liaison, but it's kind of unwelcoming liaison. Now, maybe somebody else can take that and have a better shot at it. I'm willing to give that up too.
So when you went to those meetings, what happened? I mean, you just sat there and
Just sit
gathered
there
information
and you listen to the meeting, and there's no recognition, there's no opportunity to, well, you have the public input, but it's not, that's the best I can explain it.
Right.
I mean, Heather was with me, and it was kind of like, well, yeah, you can come if you want to.
Is that something that we could put on rotation?
just kind of have us each go to one on a schedule, and then we all get a feel for what it is.
I'd hate to just eliminate it, or I think it's very important to have that connection with the school board. We've got so many issues that we're working on, that I think it would be terrible if we didn't have a liaison or a liaison,
And I agree,
available.
and I think I have excellent relationship with the superintendent and Pat Hamilton and the staff, and, Heather's meeting with him quarterly, so I don't think we're missing anything, but that's the answer to your question.
So would you like people to contact you if they're interested in the positions, in taking any of those roles? Do you want people to speak out tonight? How do you want to handle that?
Yes, I mean, this is an open discussion.
But you said you're willing to jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you
I
want?
like that.
Do you want help or
Go
not?
for it.
I mean, we're asking you, what do you want?
If somebody, are you talking about Adams 12?
About anything.
Oh, well, if I need that, I'll ask for it, and I'll involve everybody.
Okay.
I mean, I'll do my best, as I said earlier, I'll do my best. When I say I'll involve everybody, doesn't mean that I invite you to dinner. If you don't want to come to dinner, that's okay. I'm still gonna have dinner.
So I did volunteer for the senior group, I have that out record.
So when will you let Joyce know if she can take that appointment, if she can take over that group?
Yes, she can take over.
Okay, Joyce,
Do
you
we
can
need-
take
do
over
we-
that
So
group.
typically-
We need a
Mayor
resolution.
Wanna have a
Escobar,
discussion.
No, we need a resolution for the different appointments to
Oh.
the different boards.
Mayor Escobar, if I may, I think the intent with bringing this item up tonight is to get direction on when you want me to bring it back. So we can prepare a resolution with the different appointments with blank spaces as we've done in the past, schedule it for July 8th. And then pretty much, so Urban Drainage Flood Control District, I'll follow up on that. Metro Mayor's Caucus doesn't require any sort of formal appointment. Police Pension Board's an automatic thing. So a resolution would consist of the Northglenn Senior Organization, Northglenn Arts and Humanities, Liaison Finance Committee. Now, the Performance Appraisal Committee is an interesting one because Joanna Small, the city clerk, and I were just recently talking about this particular committee in light of the changes that we've made to the system, where all of council is involved in this committee, involved in the evaluation process. So that really is more of a question, do you want to continue with the Performance Appraisal Committee? And that was something that's on my ticker list to bring to you at a future meeting. So if you'd like, we can set that discussion aside for now. So it would be the Finance Committee, Northglenn Arts Humanities Liaison, Performance Appraisal Committee. Maybe we could couple those items on July 8th. And then the Northglenn Senior Organization.
I think the committee for the evaluation, that was actually working through the evaluation process, the templates, what we liked, moving forward. It wasn't doing the evaluations at that point. It was just working through what those new valuations were gonna look like. So
I don't think so, because I think that was the organizational meeting that had that particular committee embedded into, all the other things that we did. At that point, we had 3 or 4 people on the evaluation committee, and that was, to start the process and do all the things that we were doing. Then as it evolved, then the council said that everyone wanted to be on the
Right,
evaluation.
but the committee that she's speaking about, I believe, is when I'm sorry.
Well, I don't think so, but,
Well,
yeah,
can
go
I
ahead.
finish
No.
what I'm saying?
No.
We had a committee that worked with the appraisal person, and that committee, because, we were asked to be on it, so that was our committee at that time, that wasn't everybody on the council. It was Antonio,
Right.
Carol, I think you were on it,
Yeah.
and I was on it. So is it that committee that you're talking about?
No,
or
it's not
overall?
Councilmember Brown. There was a resolution adopted, was it in 2018, Joanna? I want to say there's 6 members of the Performance Appraisal Committee. And I can't remember who everyone is off the top of my head. So there's formally an adopted committee. And then when we started the update to the performance appraisal system, Joe worked with a subcommittee of council. But that subcommittee was never a formal action by resolution.
Okay.
By council. So this reference to performance appraisal committee, the mayor's required to be a member. That was done by resolution. So that would be something that would have to be updated. And that's why I mentioned that I can add it as a discussion item and we can dive into the details at the July 8th meeting if you'd like and figure out how you want to handle that moving forward. Keep it the same or all of council? Is there a need for committee? I don't know. I'm not prepared to make a recommendation, but that's where its origins are.
Thank you for clarifying that for me. I appreciate it.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm curious, with us now having a vacancy in Ward 4 and bringing on a new council member, are we going to be assigning or giving the opportunity for this new council member to also be a liaison and fully be a member of council?
Good.
And so if that is the case, what is the process for that? How does that work?
Well, I guess first we have to fill the seat and then maybe have this discussion again. But I think, in the meantime, because there's only 134 days, and we're going to go to an election, and all this is going to change in 134 days.
Right.
So, my desire would be is to keep it as simple as possible for the next 134 days, unless someone has a specific need.
So at our last study session, we talked about I volunteered to join the Metro Fire. So is that something that we need to add in the meantime? Or is that just something I can go to without?
We need a resolution to appoint you.
The appointments are made via resolution, so I'd recommend that council be consistent with that process.
So is that, so then there's 2 resolutions, there's that one, and the one for choice?
I'm sorry, I know I've been gone for a month. Did we lose somebody? Did we lose our representative from the fire board? Or are we just adding another one?
We discussed it last meeting.
Right.
At the study session that Meredith would be interested in taking.
And we left it that there's an answer as to why the other person didn't go. I think it's owed that. It's just a no.
Can we
That's
just move
pretty
forward
adult-like.
with July 8th meeting and having those resolutions?
If that's the desire of council, yes.
Great.
Mayor Escabel, can I just get consensus from council? I heard a few yeses, but I'm not clear as to whether or not there's consensus by council to move forward with bringing the liaison positions for appointment at the July 8th meeting.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Okay, communications.
Can I ask Heather a question really fast?
Sure.
Heather, when
Yes.
does, or Corey, Mayor Pro Tem, is that the discussion that happens on the 8th? Or do we leave that position open until the election?
It's not left open until the election. The
Okay.
question is whether you want to do it on July 8th or whether you want to wait till the new council member is selected.
So we can't actually, it's not something that has to be acted on right away?
Correct.
Oh, okay. I think my personal opinion is, I don't care whether we wait or if we do it, or we wait for the divorce. It doesn't matter to me. I just wondered how that was gonna fall into place.
If the mayor were to miss a meeting, in the absence of a mayor pro tem, the council would have to essentially, by vote, select someone to preside and act as the mayor pro tem.
You mean I don't get to do it just because I'm parliamentarian and third in charge? Come on.
So it's council's prerogative in terms of timing at this
But
point.
we don't need to wait till we see.
You do not need to, no.
Okay, what's the wishes of council? Does it matter?
I'm good.
Wait?
I could go either way. I do not have a preference.
I'm sick next week, who's gonna run?
We'll figure it out.
Corey.
Corey.
will do it. Take your vitamins.
Corey, done.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
Jordan,
we're
do you
go-
have a preference? Wait, Meredith?
But I don't.
You wait? You have a preference? Okay. There's no preference, I guess we wait.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further?
No, Mayor.
Okay. So communications. Let's start with you, Jordan.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Meredith?
On the 13th, I attended the long title, North Metro elected officials briefing about the end line. It was actually really exciting. I had some concerns about some safety conversations, and I know they're working with staff to figure out when to have some of those safety presentations. Brooke was also there, thank you, and.
I was invited.
Yeah. So I had two things that I kind of left a little worried about. It brought up my questions about the flex ride, which you and I will talk about. But the communication about the safety of the end line, I feel like is not broad enough, and I really would like us as a city to push back on that. They have a cute little display that they had at the Thornton Fest where they show the gates and they teach the kids how to do that. My bigger concern is I live very close to that line and I've had no information. I haven't had a door hanger, which they said they put out. I haven't had a flyer. I haven't had any. My concern is that those lines are live right now and people don't do that as consistently. I think it's a safety concern for me in a big enough way that it's one of those things that we have to push out repeatedly and not just once. And if we're relying on RTD to do the communicating, I feel like their scope is too narrow. So if we could look into that, or I know Brooke was in that meeting and heard some of that.
I have an impromptu meeting this Friday to talk with the communications manager with all the other planning directors, and I don't know what the subject matter is, other than it says online, so.
Okay, well, and that's just something I was a little worried about there. It was a meeting for elected officials, and there were only two in the room, myself and someone from Commerce City, but that's just my big thing. I don't feel like that we're pushing out the safety, especially even though the Thornton stop is not our stop. Our students, it's really, really close to Century Middle School and the Adamsville Ed Center, and it's pretty open, and that's a huge safety concern for me. So I just want to hear from RTD that they're doing more with communication, but also they had mentioned that they were going to have their little teach tube set up at Pirate Fest. But we get a lot of non-Northglenn residents at Pirate Fest, and so I just want to make sure that we're communicating in a broader scope. I'm repeating myself, but it's a concern.
Mayor?
And then I went up to CML and had a great time, did a lot of learning, and it was just an appreciated benefit.
Mayor Escabel, can I add just a couple items?
in response to Councilmember Leidy's concerns. Grady just texted me, and she has an RTD communications call this Friday, and she can push on that educational piece. RTD has not followed through with items such as door hangers and other communication outlets that they've previously expressed to staff that they would be doing. Additionally, Brooke and Susan Baca confirmed that all of you are on the email distribution list for that local elected officials meeting because of prior feedback that not everyone had received those emails. So if you continue not to receive the email, please let me know. I also sent an email, I want to say roughly 2 weeks ago, to Dave Genova and our RTD board rep, Vince Busick, requesting dates of when they would be interested in coming to speak to City Council, and I have not yet heard back from them, so I will do an additional follow-up with them, and that was in hopes of getting them in here to talk about not only N-Line, but also talking about bus service. So just a couple more bits of information.
Well, and she did mention that she was willing to come to ward meetings, and it might be something that Ward 1 should do in particular, since we're right on that line. So we haven't gotten anything. And so, and they made a statement, they communicated like a radius around the stop. I was like, but that's not enough. So, I can check on that.
Radius.
Just double check on that on Friday.
And also, Meredith, just to your point, NADA has pushed on RTD about this issue, their failure to commit to their communications plan over and over and over. So this is not a new issue whatsoever. It's very consistent with previous behavior. But we'll continue to.
I have nothing.
Joyce, no? Becky?
I want to thank all the residents that have reached out to me over the last 6 weeks and called me and texted me, and staff that's done that, fellow council members that held my hand through the last 6 weeks of my life. It always amazes me. I've had emergency situations that I've had to leave town for. The residents in this community, they notice everything. They notice when you're not in a meeting. They notice everything about it. And I just love that they reach out and they want to know, are you okay? And most of the people, is your father okay? That kind of stuff. And I just think that we have some of the best residents anywhere in the world. And I appreciate all their kind words and, jokes. Got quite a few text messages that were jokes to try to keep my spirits up and stuff. So I really do appreciate all the residents here, and I appreciate them supporting me and being so understanding of this last period. Because I've been out of town and taking care of my father, I watched all the meetings online. I watched all the YouTube videos and stuff. And I just wanted to say that from a council person's perspective, I have felt that our council has been incredibly divided over the course of the last 2 years. I understood the previous mayor's frustration over it. I understand my own frustration over it. I've given a lot of thought to it and how council can move forward without having any animosity or any harsh feelings. And I've made some decisions in my own personal growth that I will no longer be quiet. I will no longer be pushed around. And I will make sure that I am transparent in what I want to be done for my constituents and in this city at all. I would like to apologize for, I had been contacted several times by residents about behaviors, and I did not I spoke to the city manager. I did not speak to other council members about the complaints that I was getting. I apologize for that. I should have done that sooner, and that's a heartfelt apology to the residents that contacted me or spoke to me at events about our city council behavior. So I would like to apologize to the residents for that. I would like to let the residents know that my goal for the next, how many days?
134.
The
Working
next
on
134 days is to hopefully stop the bleeding within our city council with the attitudes and the anger and the superiority complex that seem to have attacked council recently. But my commitment to the resident support is that I will not participate in any of that. I will continue to support the city, which has only been my concern since moving here 20 years ago. I will not step down because I will not be pushed out. And I will make any decisions about rerunning for re-election in November at my own time when I'm ready to make those decisions. But those are things that I felt like I needed to say. I support Antonio as mayor. And I've told him that before during conversations. He knows some of my concerns and some of my points, and I think that he is a great choice for the 134 days that we have left in this term. I just wanted to make sure that I got my opportunity to say my piece and to make sure that the residents that I represent know that I will no longer accept the behavior on our own council. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. I guess in the last 2 weeks, been extremely busy trying to juggle family reunions and CML and deciding whether I wanted or that I was seeking this position. And as I said earlier, this is what I signed up for, so I want to thank my constituents, thank my colleagues, and I'll do my best. I attended CML, and my biggest takeaway from CML, I think I said it last year, I'll say it again, we're in really good shape. We are in really good shape. You know, I mean, I attended the city clerk's presentation, census. I mean, we're on top of most of the things that are going to be coming to us in the next 134 days and beyond. But we are in good shape. We don't have the infrastructure problems that some communities have. Some communities, employees are wearing 5 and 6 hats. You know, they're the planning director, they're the city clerk, they're the finance director, and anything else that needs to be done that day. Maybe if the public works don't show up, maybe they take care of that too, I don't know. But we're in really good shape. And I'm proud of this city, I'm proud of the staff, I'm proud of City Manager Geyer. I think she's done a tremendous job, and that's it. Thank you. Marcy?
So, first updates on the Anythink Library. I mentioned a couple of months ago that Anythink is going through a space assessment of all of their facilities. The first one that stood out for them is Huron. The Huron branch is over capacity. They are looking at means of where they can kind of repurpose some space and rooms, what their options might be for there, but it's just one of the things that is busting at the seams for them. Commerce City and Bennett are alternative locations that they really need to look at some kind of expansion, repurposing of rooms, changing spaces. So they have a team that is looking at all of that right now to see what they can do. I think it's just a testament to how great the library system is here to be able to have this problem, right? It's a good problem in some ways and a bad problem in others. But it's something that they have at the forefront of their mind and are looking at. At the board meeting last week, they announced that the My Summer program this year is the best year for that program that they've ever had. They did a discount program with the Denver Museum. I wasn't able to hear Pam when she said the number, but I think she said it was somewhere around 15,000 participants in that, and that's the largest they've had. If you haven't heard that the goats are back at the library, there are 2 last chances to be able, well, I guess technically 3, tomorrow at the Anythink Bennett location from 10 to 2.
Wednesday from 10 to 2 at the Commerce City branch, and then on Friday of this week at the Anything York Street 10 to 2. So if you want to take your kiddos to see the goats, if you want to take them and go see them, please do so at one of those 3 branches. I also attended the swearing-in ceremony 2 weeks ago for our 2 new officers, and just wanted to give an extra congratulations to Officer Frazier, who, fun story, that is the grandson of one of our residents that many of you might know, Mr. and Mrs. Clocker. They're on the beautification program. That's their grandson. And he was sworn in on Tuesday and married on Saturday. So he had quite a week. So extra congratulations to him for 2 big accomplishments in 1 week. They had the room full with their families, which was great. And then lastly, Becky, I appreciate your comments, but, you know, I know a lot of residents came and talked about the negativity, and one thing for me is that I've kept my mouth shut for 2 years, and I think there's a lot of things that are frustrating about the council, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we don't have issues. I'm not going to pretend that I'm not a contributor to those issues, because I am, but one of the things that I'm going to say is that I'm not going to tolerate that we're going to sit up here, and we had a huge discussion at a study session about a stinking award that someone was going to receive, and then you sit here and you sweep under the rug that someone doesn't want to answer the question as to why they made a choice not to attend an appointment. It's not okay with me. That is not okay that you made such a big deal about an award, yet you're okay with a council member continuing to disregard her appointment and say nothing, and at the same time knows the process and the procedure to do it, to get her name off of it when she did it one time. What's frustrating to me is that is the residents that deserve an answer and deserve the attention, and you continue to ignore it and sweep it under the rug, and I refuse to do that. And lastly, I take that everybody has a different take on things, and to make a comment and sit up here and say that it's a different council, good luck with that. But you all on 11/27 made a big deal about your appointments, and I keep coming back to that, because you all keep coming back to how things were difficult with our mayor. Remember, you all were contributors to that difficulty too.
Julie?
So, my week was pretty good, actually. I went to CML, which was a great conference to be at. I love going up there to network. Got a couple good ideas to bring back. I agree with Antonio that, you know, we're doing some really awesome things. I think that there's always room to grow and get some new ideas from other cities. So that's actually what my favorite thing is, to go and just get ideas of what other people are doing. So other than that, that was about it. I did have a failed attempt to go camping this past weekend because it snowed ridiculously. So that was pretty horrible. But that's it for me.
Jenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few updates from me this evening. I, too, attended the Colorado Municipal League's annual conference in Breckenridge. It was a really great opportunity to catch up with colleagues from across the state and learn about some of the new and innovative things that they're doing, as well as share some of the great things that we're doing in our city as well. Second up, 2 weeks ago, I attended a Start by Believing meeting with Chief May, and it was Westminster's coalition meeting, and they had a staff person from the national organization there, and so it was really great to hear a little bit about how their community is rallying around the Start by Believing campaign and increasing their commitment to collecting pledges, and then thinking through what some of the opportunities we have as a city throughout the summer may be. Thirdly, after our previous conversation about appointments, I wanted to share that I did miss the last Parks and Rec Advisory Board because my husband's grandmother passed away. So I want to be transparent about my absence. And then finally, I want to say, well, 2 things. Congratulations, Mr. Estelle. I'm very excited to be working with you in this role over the next 134 days. Please let us know what you need for you. You certainly don't have to carry this alone. And then finally, Ward 4, with the vacancy, consider applying if you are interested in serving and learning more about how our city works. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions and be a resource for you throughout the application process. So that's all from me tonight. Thanks.
Anna?
To piggyback onto what Councilmember Wilford just said, encouraging the Ward 4 residents to apply for the Ward 4 vacancy now, I just wanted to confirm with council, we have updated the council vacancy application based on the feedback that we received at the study session last week. That will be pushed out to the public on Wednesday. You may not see the legal publication in the Denver Post, but that will serve as the city's legal notice for the vacancy process. We also have an opportunity to publish an advertisement in the El Comercio de Colorado publication that I think is a great opportunity. And then the Communications Division has arranged to post it on the city's website, on all of our social media accounts, and then to deliver postcards to all of the residents in Ward 4. So people should know about it, and they can always stop by City Hall and visit the city clerk's office, and we'll have applications ready for them as well. And we'll also, one other thing, we will also be updating the election information for November 5th, since we will have that extra position to be elected for the office of mayor. That changes things a little bit, since we had just anticipated the 4 council seats. So that information will be updated for residents as well.
City Manager Carr?
Just a couple of things. Because the executive session that was originally scheduled for this evening has been postponed, we're going to go ahead and schedule that for next Monday evening. So next Monday evening is July 1st. It's a regular study session. If you're not planning on attending, if you could let the city clerk and I know if we need to make different arrangements, the sooner you could let us know, the better in terms of preparing that agenda. And then Brooke is going to provide an update on dumpster days.
So, on June 8th, we had our first dumpster day. We collected 41 tons of trash. And this weekend, we're still collecting the dumpsters over at Northwest Open Space because we believe we far exceeded, I don't have a total yet, but one of our haul trucks actually went down in trying to move the dumpsters, so it's going to take a little bit longer. So if anybody calls over in Ward 4, it's because we're still trying to get them all out of there. But I believe we still have 8 more dumpsters that we need to remove from that. So once we get the totals, we'll push it out in the city manager report. But I think, by and large, overall, huge success, heavy participation, very well run. We had a lot of positive feedback from the residents that attended about how organized and fluid it was and how painless, et cetera. So we'll be looking forward to bringing this back to council for future effort here, but I just wanted to let everybody know that it went very well, and we'll get you the totals once we get them. But I'm gonna guesstimate that we're probably talking 80 to 100 tons of trash in total is probably collected, but we'll get the actual numbers here in a couple of days. So, thank you.
Corey?
Nothing this evening.
Okay. So that takes us to public invited to be heard. Seeing nobody here, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
We're adjourned.